We brought a lot of soda.
Not that in.
Wasn't thinking about this. The refreshing.
You're like, she loves it. She just said, say that if you're presenting your residence, like, give me a minute. Just give me enough to.
She did. And I didn't. Words.
You guys, whoever's on, I'm doing yourself. I'm still in the waiting.
Okay, somebody is speaking. I'll promote you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's this one.
早上好，如果需要中文翻译，请到我们的同事那里拿耳机，谢谢。
And you can mute yourself. Three vote aye. Allison Bowen, present. Daniela Egoa. Gavin Hilton,
Present.
Charles Love is not present. Maud Marin.
Here.
Sonia Patel.
Present.
Jessica Savage. Sarah Shackford Ehrenberg. Sabina Serenise. Present. Leonard Silverman. Ray Foskin is present. We have a quorum.
So the next item on the agenda is the Galaxy's calendar meeting along participation. We follow all resolutions in order. I will be the right doing as the president. We'll just please ask the council members wait until you are recognized by the chair. before you speak. If two of us or more of us are speaking at the same time, it's not going to work out very well. Other than that, I would just ask that we respect each other's time. And I would also ask that if you are, if you have signed up with our language sheets at the back of the room for people who wish to participate in our public speaking sessions. Public speaking sessions are generally limited to 2 minutes. And if you have something you need to speak right, I would just have to try to continue to play about 2 minutes. But I also know there's not another law that's here. And I've also been notified that some of the longer term minutes. Resolutions. I would just ask that council members who wish to make this application, that the resolution to take approximately 1 minute for the resolution. And a resolution for the public to put posted online. In the links that will be on the channel. Would anyone like to introduce the resolution of this 233? Resolution generally tax material and often supports students with higher study and okay. Would anyone like to introduce that? Oh.
On resolution 233, on resolution 233, the exact same reasons that I introduced this resolution last month are the reasons I introduced it this month.
Would anyone like to use resolution 234? Just again, we will have to step all the resolutions. And now, dealing with hatred, terrorism, respect to the other day. Would like to make an announcement hostage.
Yes, so I'd like to introduce resolution 234, which acknowledges the grief and anguish and outrage and conflict that many of us are feeling as with the current events in Israel and Gaza, and grasping the tragic human toll for terrorism and war.
You, that's the resolution. Would anyone like to speak and introduce resolution number 235? Entitled resolution proposing a 60-day limitation on shelter stays for families and public school students.
Thank you. Thank you, Can you hear me? Okay. So this resolution, kind of came out of a school visit I made. As you know, we do have a significant number of students in District 2 and in our city that reside in temporary housing. And there's been a rule called the 60-day rule saying that families need to reapply for shelter after being in shelter for 60 days. And though under federal law, students can continue to attend their original school, this creates a lot of difficulties for students who might get moved to a shelter like very far from their original school and might still want to attend their original school and might also not know if in another 2 months they're going to be moved again. So I think this resolution is just to give consistency to those families who really, really desperately need some consistency and stability. But it also gives consistency and stability to schools. Like the schools need to plan resources and personnel to service the needs of these students, and it's very difficult when students are being moved in and out like frequently. So by having opposing this 60-day rule, I hope that we can give some consistency to both our families and our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone like to talk and introduce resolution number 236? Entitled resolution calling for the reinstatement of the recently canceled new school safety agent class and an adequate number of school safety agents.
Thank you. Mayor Adams announced last week that he was cutting, it was a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, that he was cutting the school safety agent class. We are already down over 1,000 from pre-pandemic levels, and this concerns a number of families. This resolution asks Mayor Adams not to do that and to adequately staff the school safety agents in all schools throughout the city and in particular District 2. Thank you.
I think also it's important just for families to know that yesterday, when Mayor Adams was asked about that, he mentioned that parents are gonna have to volunteer to make sure that the schools are safe, because there's not enough staff. So this resolution also addressed this because we believe that parents should not have to volunteer safety school agents.
Thank you. The next resolution is entitled Resolution number 237, resolution to appoint an administrative assistant. I think this is very self-explanatory. It's just a procedural vote to approve the selection of the administrative assistant that we interviewed and offered the job to. The next item on our agenda is program presentation. There is no program presentation for tonight. We did have a presentation last month of the District 2 planning. That presentation, I believe, has been posted online for any of you who are not available to make it or to see it. You can see that presentation if you look at the recording or the materials for that presentation. Again, are posted on the District 2 Community Education Council website. There is again, for those of you who are reading the sign-up sheets, if you'd like, we're going to have 2 public speaking sessions. And right, right there, we have another council member, right? Just Sabina's name here. And the next item, so we will have our first public speaker session. This is going to be limited to 2 minutes per speaker, so if you could just kindly limit your time to 2 minutes, and we appreciate it. We're not going to hold you exactly to 2 minutes, but we do appreciate it. We will start to chime in if we go over 2 minutes.
Thank you. So when I call your name, I'm going to call a few names this way we can have people come to the front. The first 3 speakers are going to be Ashley Detrasovic, Lucia Burtsuk, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anybody's name, and Naz Ahmed Georges. So if you can come up and come to this microphone.
My name is Ashley Petrosic. I am here today because I'm a District 2 parent with a bilingual French-speaking child and a baby at home who will also learn French. Many parents in the district would like to see the bilingual program that is currently started in the 76th Street pre-K expanded to K through 5. I was raised in New York. I went to public school, and I would like to see my children attend public school, but I also want them to be able to continue their education in both French and English, which is not possible in our district right now. New York City schools with bilingual programs introduce language way too late if they don't start in the K through 5 age range, and we can fix that by expanding this existing program that has been successful already. The success of this program is without much promotion. Most hear about it through word of mouth or through other people in the French-speaking community. And many parents are interested in enrolling their children, and even though there's currently no plan for these children after pre-K. Where do they go next? What plans are being made to expand this program? And I recently also attended a D3 meeting that was a multi-language expansion learning group. And District 3 has many bilingual programs that are thriving. Why aren't we making movements to do the same? And what can we do to expand this program? I'd like to ask Superintendent Kelly, what do we need to do to make this program move forward? We've had lots of answers over the years about the things that have happened. I know that there was recently a community poll that we haven't seen the results of, and that children right now don't have a place to go after the pre-K. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I just want, before the next speaker makes their statement, just for those people in the audience, this is not like an answer question session, so you can ask rhetorical questions or you can address questions, but there really isn't any back and forth between the council and members of the public or Superintendent McGuire, especially also when he gives his presentation later, so just wanted you all to be aware of that. Next speaker.
Lucia Burtsuk.
Hi, I'm Ozia. I'm a District 2 parent. My children go to PS 59, and My main reason for being here is about resolution 233, but I just want to say that my son actually went to the pre-K, the bilingual French pre-K program, and it is incredible, not just from a language perspective, but also the neuroplasticity of a child that, you see the progress that happens. So I reiterate what you're saying, like 1,000%. I am a Muslim parent in this community, and I apologize if I get emotional. I know it's hard for everyone, like a lot of, October 7th happened, and then subsequently, we are still in the middle of a war. And while I completely, am for any stance that is against anti-Semitism, I also think this resolution as it stands is not sufficient because there is also a lot of rising Islamophobia. I mean, I don't know, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Upper East Side Moms Facebook group. It is a place where, as a Muslim parent, or not even as a Muslim parent, I have seen people, cheer for and support, their Israeli and their Jewish, families, and I think it's incredible, but I also find that it is an environment where, someone wanted to post, something to raise money for Palestinian children that had more hateful remarks than it had anything to help these children. So I think this, resolution as it stands is not very inclusive. I think it doesn't address a war that is not an isolated October 7th issue. There are things happened since. So as it stands, I don't think it's, great for a Muslim parent. I would love it. It's such a diverse school district. I would like that resolution to include that. And then the part,
It's 2 minutes, we conclude. Finish your thought, please.
my last comment is more around the last part where it says there should be appropriate resources and to students and staff, including educational resources. I think overall, I really like resolution 234, I think the one after that. I definitely think there should be education around anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, but I don't think it should just be one-dimensional.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nas Ahmed Georges.
Hello, good evening. My name is Naz Ahmed Georges. I have 2 kids in downtown in the public schools. And I wanted to just reiterate what Fozia mentioned. I actually have a background where I have an Islamic Sunday school down in downtown Tribeca, but we used to be located for 5 years in a synagogue as an Islamic school. And our curriculum writers were actually, some of them were Jewish, and some of them were Jewish Israeli, working with Muslim curriculum writers, because we had the objective of increasing, the end objective of education is to make this world a better place and to help our children be educated in pluralism. How can we live together as one community? So with that, I do support the resolution 234. I think that it includes all human beings. I see myself and my children side by side in a world where Israelis, Palestinians, Arabs, Jews are living together. And I was very deeply touched by one of the op-eds in the New York Times that showed a Jewish man wearing a kippah in Saudi Arabia, reading the Torah. This is the kind of world that I envision. And education leadership has to envision something that is bigger than the current war. And this is why I'm here tonight, because I would like to support 234. I have my concerns about resolution 233, because it may be taken as an act of intimidation by many parents who are unable to speak out for whatever reason. Then they might not be politically and educationally equipped to come to gatherings like this. So I feel that it's very important that if you do want to say of Jewish and Muslim and other students, I feel that it's important to have a safe space to speak out and to also work together with curriculum writers to define what anti-Semitism really is, and also to define the outcomes of what we are wanting at the end of the day and how we can achieve together.
Thank you. The next three will be, again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name. Itbetsim Kirshin.
No, it's a stop.
Thank you. Michael Barrett Bloom, and then Kalani Jenkins.
Hi everyone,
Your-
thanks for organizing this. My name is Iktisam, I'm a District 2 parent. I'm from Bangladesh, I'm Muslim, and we're all horrified right now. The images that are coming out of the Middle East, of Gaza, of Israel are horrific. There's no question solidarity must be shown to the victims of the attacks by Hamas in Israel. Those murdered, the hostages and their families continue to suffer. However, there's another population in deep crisis and tragedy, and that is not mentioned at all in the resolution that is number 233. To date, about 11,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of them children. The number continues to climb. There is little we can do from here, but a divisive resolution is certainly not the way to mend bridges between two communities. Instead, I would argue it further divides us as a city by ignoring an entire population of students, such as my son, and their families. Please take this back to the drawing board and widen your statement of solidarity to include Arabs and Muslims. In your resolution, you state that you recognize students across New York City come from diverse backgrounds, and yet you fail to mention the widespread Islamophobia our students and families face on a daily basis. A 6-year-old boy was murdered in Chicago. He was stabbed 26 times. If that is not a hate crime, I don't know what is. Many numbers are underreported because of a fear of backlash. Many Muslim families in the public school system in New York do not speak English and are afraid to come to gatherings such as this. So we need to speak for them as well. And I would hope as city council members, you think of those families as well. Finally, you mentioned that schools should offer educational resources for students to learn more about the conflict. I would urge caution and care when adding to these materials, and a careful vetting that includes participation from voices on all sides of this deeply tragic war. I would recommend that you rethink this resolution and please make some much-needed revisions. The resolution as it stands creates a disturbing and hostile environment in our school system and for all of our beautiful children. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, Eric Absoon.
Thank you. My name is Michal Berikman. I'm being Israeli American. I have 3 kids in District 2. What's going on in the streets, in schools, and higher education frightens me. What frightens me is the ignorance of the woke teenagers who raging hormones and think they know and actually have no idea. They hate Jews because they get their references from TikTok and social media. But if you ask them where or what is Israel, they'll say that Israel is Hamas, or that the IDF is responsible for the October 7th atrocities. It all starts with education. You must include teaching the Holocaust and world history in schools. You must show movies such as The Wave, starting at least in 6th grade. The Wave was a movie from 1981 about a social study teacher that did an experiment in a high school in California after the students could believe that the Germans had no idea that Jews are being slaughtered. He basically showed the high schoolers how easy it is to become part of such society. This is what's happening here and now with high schools and colleges. Their education is coming from misinformation they learn in social media such as TikTok. They chat from the river to the sea without realizing that it means let's kill all the Jews and everyone that lives in Israel, including the Arab and Christian Israelis. The ignorant shallowness and darkness of those teenagers is alarming and startling. It all starts with education. I suggest, in addition to including the life curriculum, to put together an office for social media that will be responsible to fight misinformation and hatred and cut it from the root. I also think there should be zero tolerance to teachers who preach for hatred of any side, such as Sirama from PS51, the teacher that won the award for Best Curriculum Teacher, the teachers that called upon parents and other teachers to use their ability to mold young minds to teach that Israel is evil, offers tips on talking to cricket children about land theft, displacement, and ethnic cleansing. It's not any teacher's job to mold young minds on teaching hatred. This is exactly how one creates monsters.
You can conclude your remarks. Finish your thought.
Yeah, proper education is the future. And it goes for Jews, anti-Semitism, and anti-Islamophobia as well, just to be clear. So, any side.
Thank you. Gulani Jenkins, and then Lupe Hernandez next.
Hi, my name is Connie Jenkins. I am from PS51, PTA and SLT member. I quickly just want to say that any resolution that doesn't include both impacted communities in the Middle East at this point is just hollow. PS51 has a very large Muslim population, as do other DT schools, and this resolution just doesn't reflect that. Resolution 234 perfectly suffices. I would mainly like to speak in support of Resolution 235. Our families at PS51 have already begun to receive letters that they may need to be located in 60 days. That would not only be devastating for the families, but also disruptive for our school community as a whole. Many of these families have been with us since last year and have made meaningful friendships. And now, a not insignificant number of students might just disappear one day. These families are an important and valued part of our community, and our school has worked hard to make them feel like they belong. Oh, sorry. And are welcome. Our PTA invested in headsets so that we can translate our meeting in real time. Now our Spanish-speaking parents are making up almost 75% of our PTA meetings. They are yearning to be part of our community, and I cannot fathom, after everything they have been through, that they would have to bounce around this city and its schools. The statistics in this resolution speak for themselves, but anyone with a shred of empathy can imagine the type of chronic precarity this policy would put these families in. It's not just unconscionable, it's bad policy, and will lead to worse outcomes for these families and our city. Stability is what they need, social workers are what they need, work permits are what they need, community and friendships are what they need, night classes are what they need, first and last month's rents are what they need, not more trauma layered on more trauma. This council loves to talk about keeping students safe. Well, doing what you can to stop this policy is a great place to start.
Thank you. Lupe Hernandez.
Thank you. Lupe Hernandez, D2 parent. I don't think I need to add more to what has already been very eloquently said. I think 233 is a very exclusive, it's not inclusive of our community. And I think that 234 embodies the safety of all of our students and recognizes the harm and impact of all of these students and families here and abroad. Wholeheartedly supporting the 235 resolution, as I just wanted to raise and highlight, as our previous speaker said, we do have current D2 students that are being relocated and have these notices. And it will come at a time where historically D2 students that have been displaced in temporary housing have not been able to return to school due to lack of transportation. I also want to uplift the fact that the bus strike, possible imminent bus strike, has not been finalized. That tentative agreement has been awaiting, not only for the rank and file members to vote on it, but also for the fact that the part of the contract that is still not negotiated and agreed on is in regard to DOE, with our attendants and matrons that get our students to the bus. So we're going to see a huge impact for these families, and stability is what we need. Some of these relationships they built. Fort Benning is not getting just new arrived families, they are getting students and families from D2, okay? So I also want to raise the fact of district planning and the cuts. We have capital improvement that funding does not address our small class sizes mandate, and the imminent cuts that are coming not only with the PEDs, but it's going to impact the programming within our district. A lot of these special education programs were funded by COVID or big money. So I implore this council to really look into reaching out to our council members and community boards to seek reso-A and participatory budgeting to keep some of these after-school programs and special education fight for things that all of our students need. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes the first session.
Did we have anyone that arrived late that didn't want to speak in the first public speaking session that came in late? Okay, then we will conclude our first public speaking session. The next item on the agenda is the report of the president. And I'm going to be fairly brief in my comments tonight. I just wanted to say that I was rather disturbed when I read an article this past week about how a Blue Ribbon Commission that was convened by the State Board of Regents has basically, I guess it's out there that they're thinking of doing away or abolishing the Regents examinations. I was a little surprised about this, particularly because I actually served on a parent advisory committee to that Blue Ribbon panel. And I personally spoke very vehemently about my concerns at the time to the New York State Chancellor. He was present at that meeting, and I said to him, I'm concerned that this process is really going to result in a weakening of standards, in a reduction of rigor, and he assured me that's not the case. And now, although I understand, I'm not sure they've come up with specific recommendations, but I think that it's being floated out there that one of the things they want to do is to make Regents examinations optional. One of the things that many of the members who were elected to this council, our platforms were focused on was to ensure that our students still have the opportunities to obtain rigorous education. There were numerous examples and explanations to why that's necessary. We won't go into that at this point, but the fact that they're actually thinking of making Regents exams optional is something that really scares me. And it frightens me and it concerns me because, again, the arguments for Regents examinations are not necessarily the same arguments that have been postulated as to why, for example, a gifted and talented test might have a racist component or might not be fair because it's administered to a 4-year-old. These arguments that I'm really at a loss to understand as to why anyone would want to do that. I think the Regents exams, which go back, my understanding, maybe Superintendent McGuire can confirm this, 100 years or so, really do provide points where we can ascertain what our students have learned and to really quantify the level of knowledge at the end of the year. Even the process of studying for these exams, I think, is not only going to write a passage for many of us on this stage, but really is a refresher course and really can bring people up to speed, students up to speed about the specific topics. So I am shocked, and I would hope that our State Board of Regents will not make these examinations optional. I only want to also point out that my middle son, who graduated from New York City High School last year, only had to complete 3 Regents exams to graduate. And I understand that that's also because of COVID. My older son, who also graduated from the New York City High School, public school, high school, also only had to take a few Regents examinations. So we're already in a situation where kids are getting Regents diplomas where they really haven't established proficiency in many of those topics. So I would hope that certainly members of this council will work with me in the future, perhaps on resolutions to really establish and make the point that we do care about these Regents examinations, that they are fair, that they do cover areas and topics that I really think are important for our children, not only to succeed in college, but to succeed as citizens of the world and compete globally in a global economy. So that's all I wanted to add on that. And really, that's all I have to say this month, but I think it's an important topic and it will affect each and every one of you, even if you have a student who might be kindergarten right now. Let's make sure we don't throw all of the standards out. Let's make sure we're able to tell where our students are and where the level of proficiency is. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the report of the community district superintendent. Superintendent McGuire, it says 15 minutes here. If we could do it a little shorter than that, we'd appreciate it.
Very long.
Okay. And for those members of the public, there are no public questions back and forth, although we will be asking questions as council members of the superintendent.
Does this work? Okay.
I would think this.
Okay, got it. So thanks so much, everybody, for having me tonight. I want to start by thanking you all for having me here. This has been an incredibly busy month in District 2 and across our city schools. We have completed our fall baseline academic screener assessments for all of our students, engaged thousands of families in parent-teacher conferences, and more fall festivals than I can count have been hosted in schools in partnership with school faculties and PTAs. Our middle school leadership conference met with Borough President Levine as they begin their annual research projects. Some of the topics and focuses, different foci for those projects include building financial literacy for all students in District 2, expanding access for transit for people with disabilities, and examining school start times. So they engage in research projects and then begin to present them not just to the city schools, but also the city council a little later on this year. We've also continued our robust schedule of professional learning for adults. This past month in middle school mathematics, we hosted 3 all-day learning sessions for teachers and administrators at MS 131, Yorkville East, PS 347, and Wagner Middle School. On Thursday of this week, all of our 8th grade math teachers will be at MS 126, and next Tuesday, all of our middle school principals will participate in a math learning walk at LMC. At PS3 earlier this month, our team facilitated learning for special education teachers around the use of diverse co-teaching models, and we held an additional learning session focused on teaching grade level content and special class placements. At PS267, the neighborhood school that has done incredible work in literacy, and whose students are now scoring at near the top of our district in regards to ELA state exam performance, our students observed teachers implementing K-2 foundational literacy programs and using data in their daily planning. As we move into December, we will move toward officially selecting Wit and Wisdom curriculum as our core curriculum in grades K-5. As a part of this selection, we will be sharing materials with schools on December 1st, and it is our expectation that every SLT will have the opportunity to review these materials and an accompanying video, which will outline the 6 literacy shifts toward the science of reading. The materials will also demonstrate how families can expect to see their children using the Wit and Wisdom curriculum as a part of these literacy shifts. I know that parents and families have been hearing a lot about the city and school budget. Thankfully, due to enrollment growth in most of our neighborhoods, school budgets in District 2 have increased more than decreased. Of our 49 schools, 35 of them have seen a registered increase beyond the projection from the previous year, and this has resulted in their receiving a budget increase, which will be allocated over the next couple of months. We are, however, in a difficult position financially and as a city, and so while schools may use additional funding to hire staff needed to fully support their students, in some cases, these funds will be used to pay for things like equipment and supplies, student activities, and other purchases that do not require continuous funding from year to year, like additional positions, teaching positions. I was also asked to share a little bit of data around school safety at our previous meeting. While I'd like to share an update regarding the request for information regarding climate and culture issues in our district, to just set the context a little bit, students, teachers, and families love our District 2 schools. And this is evidenced by the fact that our 23,000 plus students are not leaving our district for charter schools, they are remaining in our community schools. We have high rates of parent participation across all of our schools, and whenever we have a teacher vacancy, we have teachers flocking to District 2 to try to get a position in our schools. In regard to climate and culture, there is always work to do. We are never done. And I want to start by sharing that even when I share the data that I will share, I don't know if Craig's going to put it up here, or if I also have some handouts for people, that we are always working to improve our data, but we are moving in the right direction. So I'll pass that up to the council members, and then I have some additional copies if people would like one here in the audience.
No, consider it problem.
So I will say that this is just a first iteration of some data in regard to climate and culture that I will share this evening, but we can also look forward to more data over the years. There are a few different points that I just want to highlight in this document.
I'm sorry, is this District 2?
This is District 2, yeah. Yeah, this is only District 2 schools, only pre-K, 3K through 12. The only high school in our district, though, is the Clinton School, so it's a small sample size for grades 9 through 12. So the top line option here, or excuse me, the top right line point is the number of class removals or suspensions, looking at the first 3 months of the year and looking over 3 years. As you see, in some cases, we have data that are moving in the right direction. Certainly the total number of incidents of removal or suspension has gone down. A quick asterisk to note that we are not yet done with the month of November. But we also see an uptick in the month of October. And so that is something that we have planned for our December assistant principal conference for our assistant principals in December and our principals in January to examine who the students are who have been causing challenges in the classrooms and may have been either removed from the class or suspended. So we are focusing particularly on those data in upcoming meetings. The next point that I want to point out here is the number of level 4 and 5 incidences in our district. Just looking at the previous year to this year, September to November, we have seen a reduction in the number of 4 and 5 level incidences by 13%. These are incidences that are categorized in the New York City Chancellor's regulations as aggressive behavior, which we might see as bullying, fighting, posting information online. And you see there that, again, in 22-23, there are 374 incidences across the district. To date, there are 325 incidences. As noted, we will continue to pull data. The council members who had requested this originally, council members Egorov and Bowen, they did send me an email making a request for some additional information, which I will work to make sure that is available in December. On the bottom part of this report here, on this document, are just a couple of other climate and culture related items. The first is rate of attendance. So roughly speaking, our rate of attendance was about 95% prior to the pandemic. In the 22-23 school year, that did drop. We did see a lot of students who were living in temporary housing, working to figure out that housing, and then become stable in their schools. This year, thankfully, once families have found a stable placement in their schools, their attendance rate has improved. So last year, when we were beginning to see a lot of this, we dropped to 92.5%. We're currently at 94% as a district. And then the final data point that I'll just share here is in regard to suicidal ideation. This is a broad category as described by the city in reference to this data point. So just to define suicidal ideation a little bit, there are 3 different categories of data that are collected there. There might be an incident that is described as there's no intent of self-harm. For example, you might have a student who is feeling unsafe, and they report to their teacher or guidance counselor, I am feeling unsafe. Teacher or guidance counselor says, hoping that, usually this is something that's handled by a counselor or a social worker. Do you have any intent to self-harm? In most instances, it is not the case. But students, thankfully, were very appreciative of the fact that students have strong relationships with their guidance counselors in their schools. And so that is always reported and referenced. Then there are 2 other levels that expressed intent, and then of course attempted are different levels of behaviors that fall under this suicidal ideation. Again, you see in 23-24 so far we have 41 reports. There are 48 reports September to November the previous year, again, a 14% reduction. I will note that while I couldn't grab the exact data point for the 21-22 school year, in that school year we did see a rise in suicidal ideation, falling into those three types of behavior among students in District 2. So I'm going to work to stretch the bounds of what I can stretch to try to provide the council and the community as much clear data on the performance of our district, both in regards to academics, but also social emotional. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. I just have a question for Charles. I can hear from
Your questions are going to be way down. You should let me go first.
All right, Charles, you have a question?
I don't need mine. Do you have any, I mean, it's really just, you may not know, because this seems odd, why is October so bad? You know?
I think it's a good question. Well, I mean, I do think that there is something you said of kids coming in. People always talk about the honeymoon period of school. And then October is often a time when we see kids settle in. But relationships are not necessarily formed. Relationships between teachers and students, between students and guidance. And so that could be a reason why we see a higher rate of incidences in October. Hopefully, if I'm continuing with this theory, then in November we see those relationships strengthen, and then the number of incidences go down.
Because for 3 years, you see, so maybe even though we're not that far this year, it'd be nice to see a whole year, see if the trend over a series of years. There's certain months where things just come down. Let's see now.
No, I agree, and I am committed to continuing to report these data.
This is not a deep question, but invariably, having served on this council for a number of years, one of the things that we invariably get as members of this council are letters from parents and schools who describe the occasional, I'm not saying it's constant by any stretch of the imagination, but the occasional incidents involving their students. And it can be all different types of schools in the district, all different locations, not naming any particular schools, because it's specific to different incidents that happen around the district. And the theme that we usually get when we get those letters or emails is that, well, this incident happened and the school, basically the response was to put the student who, I'll count as the victim, in a room with the attacker or the person who created the incident in the first place to try to get them to talk about it, kind of restorative justice. So I would like to know, to what extent could you define for the audience, including the council members, what your understanding is the definition of restorative justice, and to what extent that is practiced in our district as a policy or as a procedure when dealing with these types of incidents that in the past, I'm presuming would have resulted in a superintendent suspension or a district-wide suspension or even a school suspension.
I will say that even though many of our schools utilize different aspects of restorative justice, our schools also still suspend our schools suspend students with a superintendent suspension, which is longer, or a principal suspension, which is shorter, or a class removal, which might just be a single day. Restorative justice is built on 3 different tiers of intervention. And the first one I don't think is very controversial. The first one is build relationships with your students. And build relationships between students. And that is the vast majority of time that we spend and energy that we spend engaged in restorative practice. Bringing students in for a morning meeting, bringing students to advisory classes, helping students get to know each other before they go on a field trip, doing a project together. We're going to engage in group work. You're going to have this responsibility, you're going to have this responsibility, you're going to have this responsibility. That's what we talk about when we describe restorative justice in this district for the most part. There are some instances when there have been a conflict between students, but these are not incidences in which there is violence is usually not responded to by restorative practice, unless we're looking to the third tier of what we're talking about, which is a student is suspended and removed from the community and then has to be brought back into the community. And that is often through the steps of bringing them in, making sure that they're safe, making sure that they understand the rules of the community, and understanding what harm it is that they've done to cause problems. But we never just take students and throw them into the room together and expect them to talk it out, or we expect students to accept each other. And the rule that schools that use restorative justice always have running through is that this has to be a two-sided agreement. We would never have two students come together to talk if one of them did not think that it was the right thing for them to do. So we suspend more students than any of us would want to suspend. But we suspend when we need to suspend. And, but the goal is always to make that number as small as possible.
Any other questions? With these incidents, Superintendent McGuire, are they generally isolated to a small number of schools? And does that change in terms of which school? If the answer is yes, does that change from year to year? So for example, is, just because we're here, is PS 130 always terrible? I'm not asking which school, but could one school or a small amount of schools, are they generally the ones that have the most issues? And what can be done, or what is done to address that? More safety agents, more social workers? What steps would you take in that case?
The issues that I think are most important in helping to eliminate the number of incidences that occur in schools are stability of the adults who are in the building, stability of the principal, stability of the teaching staff, because those are the people who help to set up the systems and structures that help to create a safe environment for kids. There are schools that have large numbers of incidences, but they generally are proportional with the size of the school. But we also have, like Wagner is our largest school, but Wagner is a very, very well-run school with strong supports and strong teaching. But they still, numerically, they have the largest district. We do work with schools when there are larger numbers of incidences, and there's a variety of reasons for why those incidences might spike. There might be an individual or a small number of students who are having a really difficult time. There might be a teacher who's having a really difficult time. There might be principals and guidance counselors who are new, who have not necessarily been trained as well. And we take responsibility for training our principals, guidance counselors, and assistant principals who enter these incidences. We want to make sure that everything is entered into the system. The thing that we always say is that report it, report it, report it, report it, report it, report it. They need to make sure that all of these data are in the system and available. But we often see that newer staff members need that training as well.
One follow-up, sure, and then I'll pass it along. For a safety transfer, what is, and I know there's no one set number, but what is the general time frame for someone to get a safety transfer? So let's say my kid is having issues, I go up to you, or I go up to the principal and say, this is a real problem, we're not gonna solve it if he stays in the school. How quickly is that child taken out of that school? Is it months? Is it the next day? What is the typical time frame? If you could walk us through that.
Sure. If I'm a parent who would like to see their child transferred out of the school, generally that can happen within a couple of days. I will say that that is a last resort, not from my perspective and but from the parent's perspective. And the child, especially if they've been in the school for more than 1 year, has built relationships, and even if they haven't built that many relationships, they understand how the school flows, they understand the rules, they understand where to go to the bathroom, they understand all these things that are important to kids. But it can happen in just a day or two.
I want to thank you, Superintendent McGuire, for sharing this data. As I mentioned today at our leadership meeting, in the access of data, the rumors and the stories and WhatsApp groups become what people are making decisions around safety in our district, and that's not a good way for parents to be making decisions based on rumors and anecdotes. And so, thank you for sharing this. I still think it's a huge problem that what is the data that we have by school that is on the NICET website is now 2 years late, and parents really, before they make decisions, final decisions for middle school, they really need to have the data by school, because that is a major concern for so many families. And so I hope we with the DOE can explain to NICET why it's so important to share the data earlier. This really is a major concern. It's the thing that I get the most emails from parents, and maybe we can work on a resolution to make sure that this data comes earlier for us, so parents can make informed decisions about, which school is safe for their kids.
Thank you. So my question is, now that we passed the October 31st enrollment cutoff date, we may still face some schools that have, significant changes in enrollment, perhaps like later in the year. And I understand there's an appeals process for schools to appeal for increased funding when they have changes in enrollment. Can you speak a little bit to what's the sort of process and like the time frame, and how long does it take, and what's sort of the success rate or the hurdles that our schools in our district have to jump through to get that additional funding?
So I will say that if our schools lose students after October 31st, they maintain the funding that they receive on October 31st, as per the number of students who are in the building. So if schools lose kids, there won't be a reduction in funding. Part of what is helping our schools right now is the change in the fair student funding formula. Our schools that are currently serving large numbers of students from families seeking asylum, like PS 130, they have received an additional allocation based on who the students are in their building. So that's one thing. There is an additional way for schools to obtain additional funds if they say received an influx of students. Primarily, right now, the structure that exists is a structure that is for students from families seeking asylum. There is a way that schools can appeal directly to their budget director, and their budget director will do an analysis of the students who are in their building, and then additional funding could come to the school. So I think that a lot of this is, we're not quite sure what is going to happen in our schools. We're not sure if students will remain, those students who are remaining in the work shelters, or if students or families will choose to send their children to a school that is closer to where it is that they're living. But that structure does exist, and that funding does flow. There's currently a structure out there and an allocation of funding that can be delivered to schools quickly.
I just have two other quick questions for you. In light of resolution 235, can you give us an estimate, I know you don't have the specific figures, as to what the number of migrant or the population of migrant students in District 2 is? And have you seen any trends that increase, decrease, especially since October 30th, because you mentioned that can affect the funding?
The number has remained relatively stable based on my unaudited numbers, which is all I have right now, which is that we have somewhere between 1,600 to 1,700 students who are living in temporary housing that we believe are from families seeking asylum in the city. We have not yet seen very many students leaving our schools. We have heard many stories of students whose families have received the 60-day notice and the need for them to vacate their current residence. So we will soon see what choices families make as to what is going to be best for them.
Okay, we're also hearing a lot about budget cuts. Part of that, different reasons are driving that. My question is, has anyone come to you or your staff, or have you gotten any notification from the higher ups saying, prepare yourself for potential budget cuts, whatever the percentage is, and if so, have you begun any sort of evaluation process in terms of where those specific cuts might be?
I have not. Most of the information that has been shared with me directly by members of our central office team are the notes that they've been sharing with me are pretty much what it is that we've seen in the papers, in the media. We do know that as a system, New York City Public Schools always tries to keep the cuts as far away from schools as possible. So there may be cuts to the central office team or the district team. We have not seen anything specific yet or told anything specific yet, but we know that keeping those cuts away from schools is a real priority.
Thank you. Any other council members have any additional questions? Thank you, Superintendent McGuire. The next item on our agenda is report of committees. Are there any committee chairs who would like to give reports?
So you're going to invite me to the committee?
You have the committee that's standing, or you just feel free to just go.
I'll just ask actually a question, Lynn, of you. We, that's relevant to the bylaws committee. We had attached last month some proposed changes to our bylaws as a result of a bylaws committee that was held. I don't see here on the calendar meeting agenda or the working agenda I might be missing it. I can sometimes miss what's right in front of me. I don't see anything on the agenda regarding the vote on proposed changes to the bylaws.
Yes.
It's part of the committee.
And what happened was last time, people were missing, so we decided to table the discussion until this one.
Okay, well, then I don't know when you want to do it. Do you want to have that discussion now, or do you want to have it in the working business meeting?
I would think the working business meeting would be the better area to do it.
Okay, and then I'll just make one comment because it seems appropriate. I had emailed our entire council suggesting that we revert to a practice that we had previously of emailing the draft calendar meeting and the draft working business meeting to the entire council before it's posted, because that would be a great opportunity to address these kind of procedural questions prior to the meeting. So just so I understand now, Len, you're suggesting that we have the discussion about proposed bylaw changes and the vote on any bylaw changes during the working business meeting? Or we do it now during the committee meeting, because I'm hearing two different things.
Well, do you have a preference? I mean, I'm willing to go with your preference. If you want to do it during I mean, I think it would be more appropriate during the working business meeting, since again, it's bylaws, and, although, you know what, let's do it during this meeting. Would you like to?
I happen to agree with you. I think it's appropriate to do it during the working business meeting, and I also think there are people that are sitting here waiting to hear our votes on the resolution, which I think would be more respectful to get to that. But I just wanted to make sure that we have it in the working business meeting.
So it was going to be discussed tonight, and you're going to have the opportunity to present the changes. They were included by Greg in the packet that was distributed and posted.
Wait, I'm just checking for clarification. So the update on the bylaws committee meeting is that we held the bylaws committee meeting. We have proposed changes that were attached according to our bylaw specification at the last meeting, and then we can discuss the various changes and take any votes necessary during the working business meeting.
That's correct. Any other committee chairs would like to speak? Okay, moving right along. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of resolutions. So let's start with resolution number 233. Would anyone like to make any comments on resolution number 233?
Sure.
Councilmember Healy?
So I'm going to vote no on this resolution. And I'm gonna vote no because I don't think it's inclusive. I do think that there's an ongoing, conflict and that it's affecting all of our students. And it's affecting our students because, families in our district have family members in Israel and in Gaza. And we need to be, I think, respectful of all those families. And it's also, it is disturbing to me that the resolution doesn't mention the rise in, Islamophobic incidents in our district, in our city. And also, I think we have a beautiful resolution, Resolution 234, that I think does center the needs of our students, and I think that's what we're here for. I mean, we're not the Council on Foreign Relations, and we don't have an answer to geopolitical conflicts, but we do know what's best for, I think, our students, and we need to really center those needs. And so that's why I'm going to vote no on 233, but yes on 234.
Any other members like to say anything on resolution 233?
I don't have very much to add. I essentially agree with the comments Gavin just made. But I just wanted to note that not signing on to this resolution is not the same thing as being anti-Semitic. And there's been a lot of challenging conversation, I think, for all of us in this broader community. And a lot of hate. And what we need is comment and resolutions that promote feelings of being heard and empathy on all sides. And so that is why I cannot vote yes on this resolution.
Any other members? Councilmember Lawson?
Yeah, I'm, I guess, happy at least to hear that people are being honest. If you recall, when the resolution was first brought up, we didn't have time to read 400 words, and it wasn't our place to talk about this stuff. And yet now everyone has an opinion, and now there's another resolution. So it's good that they're being honest about it now. So I just want to say that about this resolution.
Thanks. I would like to just mention that the resolution, that 233 specifically talks about anti-Semitism, and I know when I brought up that it's not about whether to include Islamophobia, which I know is a concern, and it's important to me, but the fact that here, so the FBI in 2022, the data showed that there were 1,200 anti-Semitic attacks within the U.S., followed by other, so I feel that this, why perhaps a separate resolution is necessary to show what is felt within that community. But we do have another resolution that I do agree is wholesome, inclusive, and includes, which we'll talk about later.
So actually, I wanted to speak a little bit more than some of the rest of you on resolution number 233. So first, I support resolution 233. We had a procedural discussion, and as you may recall, for those members of the public who are not here or who haven't watched or at our last meeting, there was an issue as to whether or not 233 should be included on the agenda. Some council members raised objections about the timing of the resolution. That's a procedural question. I had raised issues in terms of whether or not this is something specifically that we should be addressing as a District 2 Community Education Council, which I think is something that has some validity to that, based on our positions or lack of positions on other topics. There was also one of the items that I raised during the discussion that we had during the procedural discussion, whether or not to include this resolution on the agenda, was what the effect would be in terms of forcing members to take political positions or being evaluated on their support or opposition to this specific resolution. And as you may recall, the resolution did not have the sufficient number of votes to end up on the agenda. That was a procedural vote. And sure enough, within minutes, literally within minutes of that procedural vote, I was getting texts how any member who, from people I know, and former members of this council, how the members who did not vote to put this resolution on the agenda, their names should be submitted to the New York Post, they should be outed. That's basically the tenor of the comments that we were receiving. And I get it, and I absolutely get it, because the emotions are raw, there's a lot of, it's wrong. What happened on October 7th, which was only a few days before the resolution, was, I mean, these are raw, visceral things. The attacks were terrible, I talked about that, and I get that, and I understand how people can be very passionate about these issues. And that's exactly why we need to step back and take a moment and think about what we do in terms of our responses, specifically when we have a procedural vote, and how the comments that people are making. What I was very disappointed in was when a member of this council then proceeded to go on to social media and characterize the people who did not support this resolution, or to say they were disgusted with the people who did not support this resolution. And then to characterize my comments, while not mentioning me specifically by name, as pathetic grandstanding. First, I take issue with that. I don't think following procedure and raising issues that are important to all of us can be characterized as any of those things. I'm very disappointed because I think we have an obligation as council members we may disagree with each other, but I think we have an obligation to treat each other with respect. And using words disgusting and pathetic is really something that I think a little better of fellow council members using when characterizing members who could have opposed this for various reasons, ranging, as I mentioned, from the question of timeliness. Again, the implication was that anyone who did not support this resolution, put this on the agenda, was anti-Semitic. And that's exactly the kind of behavior that really frightens me and upsets me. That being said, what I mentioned last week, or last month, is I would support this resolution if it was on the agenda. I do hear the comments that members of the public made. I respect your comments. I get it, but I don't really subscribe to whataboutism as an argument here, which is, I don't mean to characterize that in a negative way, but this resolution specifically addresses anti-Semitism. This resolution also, by the way, the timing of this resolution was before the action, I believe, before the Israeli response, or whatever it is. It specifically references anti-Semitism, and I think that is a problem, and I don't think we have to address every other issue in every resolution that we do decide to have a discussion about what's on the agenda. So I will be supporting this resolution, but I will hope, and I would hope that if anyone does not support this resolution, that one will not dox my fellow council members, will not threaten to out them, will not claim that they are anti-Semitic, will not say you are disgusted with their behavior, because that to me is actually repulsive and it's frightening. And anyone that uses social media to do that is as guilty as those people that are propagating hate and hatred. Whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or whatever it is. But that is something I will call out every single time. So, sorry to get so agitated, but again, I support this resolution, but I would hope that if a member chooses for whatever reason to not support this resolution, it will not be characterized and labeled as anti-Semitic.
Thank you. So, just from an administrative standpoint, in the absence of an administrative assistant, I monitor the CEC mailbox. We did get 174 emails over the past few days. A lot of them came today about this issue. 26 were against the resolution, and 148 were for the resolution. I say that just to provide, just for informational purposes. What I am hearing and what concerns me is that 233 and 234 are not mutually exclusive. You can support both. 233 talks about anti-Semitism, and what I've been hearing here, and in many other places as well, it's not just here, is that anti-Semitism has to be looked at only with anti-other things. It cannot be, you can't say there's anti-Semitism without saying, well, there's anti-Semitism, but there's also this, or there's also that. We can talk about anti-Semitism, just anti-Semitism. 234 addresses a whole plethora of very serious issues. 233 talks about it, and there is a very big concern, especially within the Department of Education. We've seen over the last week where principals, teachers, and even other CECs have outright supported, encouraged, promoted students to walk out and join rallies where there were students screaming, F the Jews. That is not anti-Israel. That is pure anti-Semitism. And that is happening within our schools. This resolution addresses that. 234 is very important as well, and I commend the authors of that. But 233 specifically talks about a very specific issue. And we don't have to, there is no reason to always say, well, there's anti-Semitism, but there's also this. We can't just do that. That's not appropriate. It's not fair to the Jewish people. I am very concerned about the rise of Islamophobia as well. Absolutely. And we can talk about that, and we should talk about that. And we should talk about that in our schools. And our teachers and our principals and our superintendents should talk about that. But we don't have to always talk one with the other. Sometimes you can take individual issues and talk about them as is.
There are people over here.
Oh, sorry. It's all right. She had this.
I just want to say there's one thing about the resolution that I do not like, and I think most of the room will disagree with me on this, but if you set your emotions aside and think about it, there's a really important reason why. It talks about educating people, which on the surface makes total sense. But the evidence through the comments here, what you saw on social media, the walkout, the things that Craig talked about, points out that everyone has, they don't have the same viewpoint on things. And so what you teach depends on how you teach it and who's teaching it. You know, Chancellor Banks sent out a phenomenal email. I don't know how many of you read that. It explicitly said, and he referenced, links to the rules about what you can and cannot say in the classroom, what you should be bringing in the classroom, teaching and not teaching, right? And what you can, in free speech, I got my free speech socks on, the things you can say things about Islamophobia. You can say that you support Palestine. You have the right to do that, right? But when we talk about we need to teach about hate and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in the classroom, who's doing the teaching? How is it being taught? At what grade level is it being taught? What is being said? So that kind of concerns me. So I'm not comfortable in this climate having the people in charge of our children's education. We just proved that this is a very hot button issue as others come up. We had BLM a couple years ago, you had gender issues. When everything becomes political, as Chancellor Banks says, they're not a place for you to bring your political ideology into the classroom. And when we say we should teach that, then that one teacher might teach what Maud wants to teach, and the other teacher is going to teach the things you don't want to taught. So I would, be a little concerned with saying that we should be teaching the way, teaching people in a way to get, here's the best thing. How about this? We have these two resolutions, 233 and 234. We've had the comments here. We've had weeks of arguing and unrest. And before that, we had the summer club of 2020 and BLM. I will ask you all, it's a rhetorical question, just nod your heads. We've been talking about race and gender, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. Do you think it has solved the problem? Thank you.
Charles, I hear your comments, I just wanted to say, I disagree with you to the extent that, I do think look, I think it's a conversation when it comes to anti-Semitism. I think it's a topic that is absolutely relevant. I think it's a topic that should be taught in school, it should be discussed. I think it is germane to children's education to know about the Holocaust as a fact of history. No, I get it. But again, I think we do need to have the conversation. And I think the conversation should be part of a curriculum, should be discussed in schools. And I don't think that this is political, because as Craig pointed out, again, we're talking about anti-Semitism here. Anti-Semitism shouldn't be political. There's been an attempt to link it to Israel, but again, we're talking, in my mind, it's two separate things, it's two different things. We can, there's anti-Semitism and there's whether you're Zionist or anti-Zionist, whatever, but these are two exclusive things. These do not have to be, these are not the same thing. So I don't think it's political teaching about anti-Semitism. We don't think it's political teaching about Islamophobia either. I don't think that's politics. I just think that that's something that clearly parents are not doing a good enough job. And there has to be, someone's got to step in to some extent and try to fill that gap. And make sure that at least they're having the conversations in school that we should have.
So I voted against a resolution last month because, and I stand by my position, I don't think it's in our role to be talking about worldwide events. Unfortunately, there has been a specific case of anti-Semitism in our district since we discussed the resolution last time. There are at least three specific cases in our district, in our schools, and two in our schools, and one in the GOE. And so I would propose a motion to add to this resolution, listing these specific three cases. And there are two more points that I want to make. One is that I really don't care if you put my name on the New York Post and if you try to shame me on social media. I've been called every single name during COVID, and I really don't give a damn. During COVID, I had to put the resolution anti-mask 3 times on our agenda. Every time that I put the resolution was not approved, I reached out to my council members, my colleagues, and I told them, what do I need to change this resolution to make you vote yes? How can we negotiate? And eventually, some people came around. Len never came around. We continue friends, even though we agree to disagree on that point. And I think that's how things should be done. The second point that I want to make is that this council has a very, very long history to talk about every single issue in the world and never talk about schools. And we changed that in the last term. We talked about schools. We only had resolutions that were so well researched, who had data. The anti-Asian resolution that we voted had specific data about anti-Asian acts in our district. And I really think that it takes so much effort and work with the last term to be able to accomplish so little for our families, and still we're losing this battle. I mean, we went from 49–50% of middle school students in District 2 going to public schools to now 46. Every single family who has resources is making a choice of leaving our district. The trend will continue. We have so much work to do, and I think we can only accomplish if we work together and really focus on our schools, because we're the only ones who are doing that. In my professional life, I talk a lot of elected officials about education. The only thing that they will tell you is that they are trying to bring more funding, and the funding has never decreased in New York City. We're now spending a fortune per student. We see no results, and we have so much work to do. And so I really urge all council members to work together to focus on our schools, to focus on problems of our district. There are a lot of people talking about these problems that are real, that are very, very real, but we're the only ones who are really focusing on our schools, and we have a lot of work to do. And so I would like to propose a motion to add to Resolution 233, the 3 specific cases of anti-Semitism, that happened in our schools, and one in our district. And I sent an email to all our council members on November 7th, listing the three cases.
Well, I would just say you have to have the specific language worked out in your proposed
Yes.
motion, but before if there is a request, no one has seconded that motion yet, so I would just ask, is there anyone else that wants to talk about resolution 233 or discuss whether or not we should make any amendments to this motion? What this resolution is like.
As I'm the primary sponsor of 233, I'd just like to address quickly two things. One, I will echo something that Charles said, that 233 and 234 are not, I think you said it, Charles, someone said, maybe Craig said it, that 233 and 234 are not mutually exclusive. That being said, I'm going to vote yes on 233 and no on 234. I had the courtesy of having a conversation with Pri, who is the primary sponsor of 234, and I shared with her, and I will just share publicly that I told her that I think it says many wonderful things that I agree with, and that if it were introduced in another month, that I would be happy to vote for it. But I think it is incredibly important in this time that we can condemn Jew hatred without having to also condemn something else. And it's why I was deeply frustrated that this resolution did not pass last month. I'd also like Lynn to just address you directly, because you addressed me without saying my name. I tweeted on social media that I was disgusted with this council last month when they wouldn't vote to add this to the agenda. Lynn, since you and I are both trial lawyers, I will just say that there are two very inconsistent things that you've said this evening. One, you said that anyone saying they were disgusted with fellow council members is deeply troubling to you, but then you said you thought it was repulsive, that people said things that, like, they were disgusted. Well, you either have to refrain from using that language or not. If you find something repulsive and you say so, I think you have every right to, but if I'm disgusted by something and I say that I'm disgusted by it, I have every right to. I will similarly point out the inconsistency that troubles me, that you said last month that you didn't think this was an appropriate topic of conversation for this council, but if you look at the minutes that we're going to vote on later this month, you spent your entire president's report talking about it. So after I left the room, when this wasn't voted to be on the agenda, you thought it was an appropriate topic to talk about. And Kelly McGuire, our superintendent, if you look at our minutes, spent a good amount of time at the start of his superintendent report talking about this issue. So clearly, both the president of the council and the superintendent of the district thought that it was appropriate to address the issues of what was going on in Israel, and I think you were both correct to do so, because I think it bears on the families and what's going on in our schools. So those 2 points I'd like to make. Thirdly, I'll just say that Daniela did reach out and make suggestions. I told her that I was not inclined to make any changes to this resolution. It was fine and appropriate last month, and it's fine and appropriate this month. And the assertion that there is historically no anti-Semitism in this district, and that it's only cropped up in the last month, which is why someone might want to vote for this resolution, is simply inaccurate. And I know for a fact that many families have reached out to Councilmember Edgaroff to share with her stories about long-standing issues of anti-Semitism that have gone on. And I will underline that the incredible number of emails we have received supporting this resolution. And I will also want to say one of the issues of anti-Semitism, one other thing before I get to that. One, I never accused anyone of being anti-Semitic for not supporting this resolution. I didn't say that, so please don't put words in my mouth. I would never toss that out. I didn't say that in writing, and I didn't say that when I've spoken about the issue. So that's something else you said, and that's simply not true. And I certainly I've written for the New York Post, but I don't ever say to anybody, you're going to wind up in the New York Post. I think if you want to get in the New York Post, write something smart and submit it. But with regard to the issue, one of the issues of District 2 anti-Semitism that Daniela suggested we include in this resolution, it's my ideas on school, and I reached out to the principal of that school and asked her to have a conversation, because I think it's more appropriate as council members that when we're discussing a teacher, rather than write a resolution saying you want to get rid of a teacher or condemn a teacher, I think it's much more appropriate to try to have a conversation to understand what that school leader is doing, and that's what I did. I have a meeting with that school leader for tomorrow set up, and I have a fellow council member whose child attends that school coming to that meeting. The family leadership coordinator is also coming to that meeting, and I think it's more appropriate to try to solve for those concerns, which are very real, and many parents have reached out and concerned about it, by having a conversation with the school leader and not immediately jumping to putting it in a resolution before you have the conversation. And so that's just to move ahead. If Daniela's motion is seconded, I'm going to not entertain that addition.
I just want to make one point of clarification, since I took the minutes. My recollection last time, and I don't remember exact timing, but for both Len and the superintendent, I don't think they spent a lot of time on this. I don't think either of them had long reports. I mean, the whole meeting was done pretty quickly. I think both of them expressed their concern and condolences for folks who had lost it. But I lost people in the conflict. But I don't recall, and looking at Superintendent McGuire, I don't think he recalled either, but it wasn't a long conversation. It was just, a couple of lines. Just point of clarification.
So to bring it back to the resolutions themselves, it sounds like we're discussing both 233 and 234 at the same time. So a couple of note points on that. I do really very much want to uplift the voices of the parents that spoke here tonight, and multiple parents around the city that I've spoken to personally over the last couple of weeks and more so the last couple of days. We heard it tonight, and I have heard it, that the tenor and this council passing independently Resolution 233 feels like an act of intimidation. It feels not safe. And it is my job as council member to represent and to protect all of the families. Resolution 234 accomplishes the purpose of condemning hate. It accomplishes the purpose of centering our families and, most importantly, our students. It is not a political statement on a geopolitical conflict. It is about the hate that many families are seeing and feeling. And I also want to point out the courage of certain families who do come and speak at these meetings. I have worked with and in immigrant communities for almost 2 decades, and the fear is real. And it is important to recognize that when voices are presented to this council, that they be heard, they be recognized, and they be uplifted. We don't often have a chance to do that in this council, so I'd like to do that with my 2-minute speaking time right now. I will be voting in favor of Resolution 234.
Would anyone else like to speak on the resolution before we discuss the motion? So there's a motion that was made by Danielle. The motion's not been seconded, so since it hasn't been seconded yet, we're not gonna have discussion about that motion yet. The question is, can we talk about 233? Anyone else like to add anything to that discussion? Any members of the, sorry.
No, I know, is there a second public speaking session?
There is, yes, there is a second public speaking session, should be second, that will be after this. I did want to just say one thing, again, this is the passion that you have and the feelings on both sides, and it shouldn't be both sides, because I don't see resolution 233 as being a side, it's still humanity. So, again, there's no intimidation here, I think it's pretty straightforward. Honestly, with that, I don't understand why people would feel intimidated based on the resolution 233. But that being said, would anyone like to second the motion by Danielle? Okay, no seconds, so there is no motion. Our next item on Last chance to discuss 233. Next item for discussion is resolution 234. Is there anyone who talked about that already? Or is there anyone who would like to talk about this specific resolution?
Right, so resolution 234. So this is to show our support to the families here in District 2, right, which represents a diverse community, as our community that's present here today has mentioned. And I want to again thank you to the parents that came and spoke. So this is a particularly agonizing time for students who are identified as Israeli and Palestinian and whose loved ones have been killed. I've been hearing from our community, from our friends, from our neighbors, the suffering of our Israeli brothers and sisters who are feeling that as right, and knowing that. And but I also hear the suffering of my Muslim brothers and sisters, and it's brought to my attention that in New York City, a Muslim student in East Side Middle School was targeted, bullied, and cornered on his way home from school. And I also deeply grieve for 6 students, which is mentioned in the resolution, in which in the religion, a boy wears a head covering, which signifies actually equality. So a teen boy going home from high school in a bus was beaten and told in this country, you don't wear that. An elderly man wearing a turban was beaten in New York and later died in the hospital. 2 weeks later, another elderly man wearing a turban was brutally beaten. And I want to thank Mayor Eric Adams, who's been a pillar of support to all those that have been affected with these incidences. So, which is why I hope our district, the CEC members that are present here, come together and honor and share our appreciation for our shared humanity and one life in all. And let it be resolved that as a council, we are united in our belief that all children deserve to grow up in safety, in health, and freedom, every single one. And let it be acknowledged that we need a community now more than ever, and we want our children to feel safe and be seen in the education system, at home here in New York City, and while at school or while in the community. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on 234? Councilmember Healy.
Yeah, I think, I said before why I supported 234. I think it's a beautifully written resolution. I think it's inclusive. It centers our students, which is what we should be centering. I just want to speak to the talk about whataboutism, because I don't think this is an example of whataboutism. I mean, we might, because there's an ongoing conflict, and these two things are intrinsically related. I think that condemning anti-Semitism and condemning Islamophobia together makes a lot of sense, because, you know, our students are affected by this. And it's not two separate issues. You know, it may have been a different thing if you talked about this 6 months ago, we talked about this a year ago, but right now we have this ongoing conflict, and I think we need to think about this together. And so we've been hearing from a lot of families, and we've received a lot of emails. I think Craig mentioned the number of emails we've received, and I've read every single one of them. And we've received emails like supporting 233, we've received emails supporting 234, we've received emails very much against 233. And what kind of resonates for me, and you know, also the comments that we heard today, is that, you know, the people talking about their opposition to this resolution, how 233, sorry, and supporting 234, you know, talking about how they fear that this sort of rise of this inflammatory rhetoric that, you know, makes them scared. And I think that's what they're talking about with 233. And we see those personal stories about people who say that they feel targeted as, you know, because of Islamophobia, and you know, people who feel targeted because of anti-Semitism. But we've seen all these you know, what really resonates for me are the personal stories of families in District 2. And so I heard those tonight. I read those in some of the emails, but we received so many other emails just like blanket, I support 233, I support 233, that, like, I don't even know, are you from District 2? Some of them are literally like from Boston, from LA, and we received like a lot of form emails today, probably like 100, which are like, I am a parent of blank students in District 2. Like, they didn't even fill in the blank. And so, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, it takes time to write that in, but what resonates for me much more are the voices of families in our district. And I think that's what we're here for. We're here for the families in our district. And, you know, families do feel afraid, and I think it's not whataboutism. There are like multiple sides to this, and we need to be like mindful of that. And so that's why I support 234 and not 233.
Principal Fong, can I just, we have a council member outside who's having trouble getting in the building.
Yeah, I was just
I think it's very presumptuous to assume someone didn't fill in a blank that they're not from this district. They may not, on both ends. People who said they opposed it. They think we don't know. I think it's presumptuous to say automatically they're not, or assume that they're not. And I don't think that somebody just writing that they're against the resolution and not writing 7 paragraphs should be discounted. In terms of your comments about everybody feeling it, absolutely, but I will say this, as a Jew, as a parent of a Jew, as a grandchild and great-grandchild of families who were thrown out of Russia, it is scary. It is petrifying when we see DOE employee push walkouts where we are hearing F the Jews. We are hearing F the Jews. It did happen. It did happen.
Not DOE led.
DOE supported, yes.
DOE did not lead that.
Thank you, you're out of order.
Yeah, or to correct I'll do it to correct the false misinformation. Students led that.
Thank you.
Not a council member.
Students said.
Wait for the public
Students
session.
and I'm going to correct
Thank
the
you.
misinformation.
Point of order, can council members, let's stick with.
So,
It's not even about 234 anymore.
So, stating that a resolution about anti-Semitism has to be coupled with Islamophobia or any other item because of the times that we're in is insulting. It's insulting to a segment of this population, a segment of the DOE. And it just confounds me how someone can imply that.
Any other council members wish to talk? We've heard on 234. Next, any discussion on resolution number 235? That's the 60-day limitation on shelter stays.
Then I'll speak to it quickly. I'm gonna vote no on this resolution, and I'll just share with my fellow council members why. While I do think it's ideal for any student to have continuity in a school, and that's generally a good thing, I think the broader issue that our city is facing in terms of the incredible number of migrant, both kids and their parents and families that need to be accommodated, has many factors more than just what this resolution outlines. One of the things is that some of our shelters are intake facilities where families can go and where they have triage services and immediate services for those families. Once those families have some of those initial services, they need to be moved to other shelters and facilities. So what this, and while that does create some disruption for some students in terms of travel time or school access, the city as a whole has other obligations that they need to meet other than just making sure that a student doesn't have a disrupted school year. There are just many other factors in terms of our ability to handle both economically and just the practical concerns of handling the number of migrants. So while I'm sympathetic to wanting to make students' school years not be interrupted, I think we also have to, as a city, have the flexibility to handle the migrant crisis in the most effective way possible. And I don't think that this, this resolution takes into consideration all of those other factors.
I'd like to just note our secretary that Councilor Bauer is here. Any other discussion on resolution number 2?
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing me. So I put forth this resolution. This resolution ultimately doesn't change the number of students in temporary housing. Like, it doesn't change the number of migrant students we have. We have these students, but what we're asking for is to have them not be shuffled around throughout the city. And I think that's important for those students. We all know, can you imagine if your child went to, change schools every 2 months? Like, what kind of effect that would have on their academic outcomes, their social emotional learning, everything. Making friends, We all know that's disruptive. And I mean, moreover, it's disruptive for schools. Schools, the kids are gonna be in a system somewhere. But it makes a lot of sense for a school to be able to plan. If schools are having their enrollment shift, every 2 months, that's not a system that I think that our principals can deal with, that our teachers can deal with. And so I think it's a very, just difficult for all parties. And, so I think we need to be mindful of that and just try to give consistency, not just for the kids, but also just for our schools and their budgets and our teachers, and all those needs need to be, taken into account. So that's why I put forth this resolution.
So I just wanted to add that I will be voting for resolution 235. I agree to co-sponsor it. The sad part about this is just a crisis that shouldn't even be taking place. But once we have these children in the system, we do have an obligation to take care of them. And I think that, as we heard tonight, it was kind of disturbing when you mentioned that students are getting 60-day notices, because I don't know if the procedure is to ignore them or if there's a palatable fear, but nobody should be living in fear of being thrown out of the school or being moved or not having that. It's hard enough missing time from school, but I can tell you that going from one school to another is, as what really point out, but we need that continuity. I think Superintendent McGuire would agree with me that continuity with your teacher, with the relationships with your fellow students, that's all very important. The entire environment that aids and promotes learning and community. And if kids are being moved around, that's just a disgrace. This shouldn't have happened in the first place, quite frankly, but when you do have these kids come into the system, you can't just ignore them, and we do have an obligation to do our best to provide that stability and promote the best environment we can for them, and that's why I'll be supporting resolution 235.
I'll be supporting 235. I have done a lot of work writing about the migrant crisis, and 80% of the migrants that are coming are men of working age. I think if the mayor and the city needs to reshuffle people, they should reshuffle single men who are arriving, who are 80% of the migrants, and I think families should have priority to have more particular children. But since now we have resolutions about things that are outside of our school district, maybe we should have a resolution about securing the border, because that would bring a lot of stability for our schools, for 100%. When principals don't have just people coming, you have X students tomorrow, there's no budget, there's no teachers, that would be really helpful to support the stability of our schools.
Thanks. Thank you. So I'm a co-sponsor and I will vote yes on this. I do have one concern, and it's putting my background on accounts, by putting my accountant head on. is that, which is specific to the asylum seekers, many of these families are being situated in hotels which are costing the city a lot of money every night, $100 every night. And I do fear there will be commitments to keep them in there for 10 months, which it's just not sustainable for the city. It just isn't. The city's gonna go bankrupt at some point. That being said, that's not an issue for us to figure out as a CEC. That is an issue that the city has to figure out, like frankly, the state and the federal government have to figure out where this is gonna happen, where this is gonna be long-term. That has to be figured out. To me, there's a human aspect, and I think Len and Gavin had stated this very, very eloquently. This is just untenable for the school, for the students. No student should have to go from one school to another school in five schools in a year. If they need services, good luck about getting those services. Five different schools, it's never going to happen, and the students will fall back even further. So there is a human aspect of this that we cannot allow students to be shuffled like this. It's just, they'll fall so behind, they'll never catch up. So for that reason, I will be enthusiastically supporting this.
Anyone else like to speak on resolution 235? Okay, resolution 236. I'd like to go first on this one. And if we're going to talk about grandstanding, this one takes the cake. Because I have to say that when our mayor literally invites the entire free world to our city, which I get, I understand, and then makes a political stunt of saying that we don't have the money and starts proposing, let's cut school safety agents, that's really disturbing. That's disturbing to me, because as Daniela pointed out, I mean, school safety is an absolute vital concern for our district. There's plenty of reasons. We have increase in crime, there's an increase in homeless population. I've been hearing from parents that don't feel safe traveling to and from schools, when their children have to use public transportation and have those issues now. And anything that compromises their safety. These school safety agents, they do a great job. They are dedicated professionals, and canceling a class it's just wrong. And I think we need to have as many safety agents as we can to promote, again, the safest environment we can for these schools.
Thank you, Nancy. So I was one of the primary sponsors on this one. I'm hearing from many parents that they're just so concerned about safety, especially with the rise of everything that's going on over the past couple of weeks. Potentially people going to schools, especially schools that have large concentrations of Jewish or Islamic, Muslim families. Having school safety agents does help, it does alleviate many of the fears. I will reiterate one of the comments that I made as a member of the public last year when this came up, that in my opinion, schools should be evaluated. There should be a formula that shows the size of the school, number of the students, number of the entrances, and it should be right sized. A school that has one entrance is a small school shouldn't have the same number of safety agents that has 4 different entrances. My understanding, I heard that PS33 lost a safety agent. They have several entrances. It's a true issue. And what happens when that safety agent has to use the facilities, who wants to take lunch? Who is at the front desk at that point? Is it a parent coordinator or an aide who doesn't have the appropriate training, doesn't have the line to the NYPD? So cutting this is short-sighted. Being so far below where we were pre-pandemic levels is short-sighted as well. I know the mayor said there haven't been major incidents or something like that. But we don't want to have any, so why take that chance? Why wait for that to happen to address this issue? So I will be supporting this resolution.
Any other discussions on resolution number 236?
I'd like to make one comment. I plan to vote in favor of this, but I'd just like to note my objection to one of the clauses. I don't see a point in trying to put forth a motion about removing it, but I just wanted to note it. The whereas clause with respect to the recent rise in anti-Semitic and anti-Islamic incidents across the city has only increased safety concerns for many families within NYC school system. And reducing security within school buildings will create even more anxiety. I would much prefer to see this connected to social emotional learning, to have concerns with respect to anti-Semitic and anti-Islamic anxiety, to have mental health professionals handle these issues. I think something like that should have been brought in here. And I'd also just like to note that while having school safety officers in the building certainly alleviates anxiety for numbers of families, it can also have the reverse effect for numbers of families. So I just wanted to note that.
Any other comments or discussion on resolution number 236? Resolution number 237. I would hope this is not controversial, but we can all support this one. And Juan, did you want to talk about this one, or is it not? 237?
Let's get into the services.
You missed the chance to put every co-sponsor on it, though. I really
That's true. By acclamation, we could put everyone on there. But I would like to I will acknowledge Maud particularly, as well as Charles, but I want anyone really stood out taking the lead to get us into those campuses. I want to thank you for that. It's not easy for Maud, Charles, and I did interview a number of candidates, and I'm glad we have someone that's in the position. So I hope you can get them on board. So I will be voting in favor of resolution 237. The next, with that, there was no motion to amend resolution 236. So with that, I'm going to go to the next item on our agenda, which is the second public speaker session. So there was a sign-up sheet. We have 5 names listed. You will have 2 additional minutes to make that come to order. Please go to the microphone there. The first person is Ozia. Thank you.
Thank you again for giving me. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate, being recognized as, parents who are being here. I did want to clarify one thing about 233, and that is, I fully condemn everything that happened, October 7th. I fully condemn any anti-Semitism that we've seen anywhere in schools, anywhere. My issue with 233, the ones that concern me, is that, there's a conflation of anti-Semitic and anti-Israel here, and the reality is, I see, news every day of tens of thousands of people being killed in the last month. So there's a war going on, people are going to have sides, and I don't think it should be anyone for their religion by any means, whether it's, it can be an anti-Semitic resolution that gets passed, whether it's now, whether it's 6 months ago, whether it's 6 months from now, and I would fully support that. But I think here, I see it as an intimidation resolution because it silences anyone who will, speak out against what Israel is doing, or, the same way, I think, what they're doing, in terms of how they're trying to seek out Hamas, how it's resulting in civilian casualties. And then the other thing that I wanted to speak was about, the migrant families. As a parent, I think it is so important that if we have the power to teach our children that empathy, to have those, you don't want to tell your kid that that classmate doesn't exist there anymore because Santa likes rich kids more, And for that, I'm, as a parent, I fully support having those children stay in their schools. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Sumitra? And then just so you're ready, after that is Naz, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, is that right? And then Lupe and then Kamal.
Hi, Sumitra, I'm a parent of a child in year 77. So I support the 233, I support 234, I'm not in favor of the 35. I think this is the second time it's happening with CEC. I think we're getting involved in things that don't belong to us. I mean, temporary housing, permanent housing for kids. I don't think so. That's something that we should be looking at. I think we get sidetracked on those resolutions. Again, I want to just one other thing that I wanted to point out was to Mayor, to Superintendent Ken McGuire. There are these high school equivalency exams for second languages and other languages. I think that's been brought up a couple of times. I think if it would be great if we can make some progress on including other languages like Hindi, Arabic, again, French. We talked about this quite some time, where students can get credit, however they push to study it. Right now, there's no such system, so it would be really great because a lot of the kids, especially in New York, are dual speaking languages, even though not in school. But there was a way to create an equivalency exam where you can be accredited for learning the second language. This is happening in Connecticut, and I've been in a few other states as well. The other thing I wanted to ask Mayor McGuire was about the priority for me too in high school admission. That you mentioned that in the last meeting you're looking into that. But then just following up, PS77 was ranked, some options ranked over PS91 over number one school about ways of continuing that program forward. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Certainly that's stressful for you. Sorry.
Thank you so much. So good evening again, everyone, and thank you. It's been a very long night. I wanted to just make a comment on Resolution 33, and I want to say, first of all, that as a Muslim and as a parent, I'm equally concerned about the safety of Jewish children and Jewish families, and not just the physical safety, but also the emotional and the mental safety. And as I speak, I'm invited to a bar mitzvah this Saturday. I have been intrinsically involved in friendships with the Jewish community, and what affects the Jewish community and their kids most certainly hits home and affects my own home. So by saying that, I just want to point out that if we could, I sometimes feel that we're not hearing each other. And if we're talking about school safety, I think that this is where a lot of the issues are coming from, is I feel that perhaps students are not listening to one another, teachers are not listening to one another, and they don't have the space to talk about things. And I think part of the reason why there's no space to talk about things is because language is fuzzy. People don't know what anti-Semitism is. Just because I don't support Netanyahu and never will, does not mean I am an anti-Semitic person. So what is anti-Semitism? And can we have Jewish people in our team, and Muslim people, and others agree about what the definition of that is and is not, first of all. The second thing that I just wanted to bring up is that there's no clear definition of terrorism as well. And this makes it extremely problematic to have a space to talk about things. Even at the UN, where I worked for many years, there was no clear definition of who a terrorist is. And this is a real shame on the human race not to come up with this. So how can we expect our schools and our teachers provide that safe space? And if we're going to talk about this, we need to talk about this all the way. The other thing that made me very uncomfortable was in Resolution 233. It talks about the importance of bringing up historical facts, but not all history and historical facts are acceptable. Now,
Can wrap up your comment, please? Just finish your thought, please, but wrap up.
So who decides what's important? I mean, we're not represented in this, so these are important questions to answer if we want to achieve our objective together as a humanity to keep our children safe in schools.
Thank you. Moving Hernandez.
Thank you. Language is important. Thank you for bringing that up. And what's missing from 233 is what's vastly important. I think what you've heard from everyone in the community here that agrees with what happened on October 7th was egregious and horrible. And I denounce the intuition of a procedural vote that took place last month. Thank you for raising this, Len. Because the hate that came, many of us have felt in these spaces when they're not being heard. And so, just to uplift that, you know, our Arab, Muslim, and Black and Latino students, parents, and teachers bear the disproportionate brunt of threats to academic freedom, rights, to the freedom of speech, assembly, and employment, due to the charges of even reverse racism. Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, as you said, are not mutually exclusive, but I reject the framing and advancement of certain groups with an agenda of stifling speech and dissent regarding legitimate political issues. And if the contextual example that you provided with a student-led, a national student-led march, being able to hear those voices, it really, I think it was unfair for you to criticize specific voices and leaving out specific voices where 234 really is able to include all of those voices. Doxing of parents and children has been happening. The impact of our harm has been deep since this last meeting. And restorative justice practices and healing-centered schools is really what we need to be looking at. The 8412 engagement was today. Those recommendations were brought forth. And we discussed healing-centered schools. SSA agents, and we appreciate them, but we also need social emotional learning. We need our social workers and the community to work as a village to be able to really support all of our students. And the regents, thank you very much. I appreciate all of them because not all of our students show their academic wealth and their experience by regents. So this will encourage all of our students with disabilities to get a diploma and do well and succeed after graduation.
Welcome back.
Hi, thank you. I'm just gonna bring this back to our schools for a second. Tonight, Superintendent McGuire announced our district's choice in Wit and Wisdom. I'm really happy about that. It was without a doubt our best option. We now have critical work to do. Changing curriculum is incredibly challenging and time-consuming and expensive, and we only have 1 year to do it. Our teachers will need tons of training. We can't afford to get this wrong. Nothing is more important or indicative of future success than early literacy. I urge this council to put your full weight behind this massive transition. We have an amazing opportunity to be creative, to be thoughtful, and to be original in how we prepare, implement, and supplement this curriculum. We cannot do this wrong. Please focus on this.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the vote on the resolution. So I'm going to ask our secretary. So what we're going to be doing is we're doing an individual vote on each resolution. Your options are to vote yes in favor of the resolution, no opposed, or you can abstain. The first resolution on the agenda is resolution number 233, condemning the attacks in Israel and offering support for students through the current period of unrest. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Reed O'Brien? Yes. Allison Bowen? Danielle Egeroff?
Yes.
Gavin Healy?
No.
Charles Love?
Yes.
Maud Maron?
Yes.
Soma Patel?
No.
Jessica Savage?
Abstain.
Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg?
Can I just, I'm sorry, Jessica, I'm sorry, didn't hear your vote.
She abstained, sorry. I'll repeat it if I need to. Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg. Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg abstains. Sabina Serenese.
Yes.
Sabina Serenese is yes. Leonard Silverman.
Yes.
Leonard Silverman is yes. Craig Slutskin is yes. So it passes 8 to 2 to 3.
8 yeses.
8 yeses, sorry. 8 yeses, 2 noes, 3 abstains.
Next, item.
Sorry. 2 abstains, sorry.
Next item on the agenda is a motion to approve resolution number 234, dealing with hatred, terrorism, and violence by honoring, protecting, and respecting human dignity. I'd like to ask our secretary to call the vote.
Preet Bharara. Preet Bharara is yes. Allison Bowen.
Yes.
Allison Bowen is yes. Daniela Egoroff.
Yes.
Daniela Egoroff is yes. Gavin Healy.
Yes.
Gavin Healy is a yes. Charles Love.
No.
Charles Love is a no. Maud Maron.
Abstain.
Maud Maron is an abstention. Sonal Patel.
Yes.
Sonal Patel is a yes. Jessica Savage.
Yes.
Jessica Savage is a yes. Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg.
Yes.
Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg is a yes. Sabina Serenese.
Yes.
Sabina Serenese is a yes. Leonard Silverman.
Yes.
Leonard Silverman is a yes. Craig Slutskin is a yes. So that's 10 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstain. Passes.
Thank you. The next resolution is a vote on resolution number 235, which is entitled Resolution Imposing 60-Day Limitation on Shelter Stays for Families of Public School Students. I would ask our secretary to now call the roll call vote.
Thank you. Preet Bharara. Preet Bharara is a yes. Allison Bowen.
No.
Allison Bowen is a no. Daniela Egoroff.
Yes.
Daniela Egoroff is a yes. Gavin Healy.
Yes.
Gavin Healy is a yes. Charles Love.
No.
Charles Love is a no. Maud Maron.
No.
Maud Maron is a no. Sonal Patel.
Yes.
Sonal Patel is a yes. Jessica Savage.
Yes.
Jessica Savage is a yes. Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg.
Yes.
Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg is a yes. All right. Sabina Serenese.
No.
Sabina Serenese is a no. Leonard Silverman.
Yes.
Leonard Silverman is a yes. And Craig Slutskin is a yes, which means it has 8 yeses, 4 noes. Passes.
The next resolution on our agenda is resolution number 236, which is entitled Resolution Calling for the Reinstatement of the Recently Canceled New York School Safety Agent Class and an adequate number of school safety agents. I'm now going to ask our secretary to call a roll call vote on this resolution number 236.
Preet Bharara. Preet Bharara is a yes. Allison Bowen.
Yes.
Allison Bowen is a yes. Daniela Egoroff.
Yes.
Daniela Egoroff is a yes. Gavin Healy.
No.
Gavin Healy is a no. Charles Love.
Yes.
Charles Love is a yes. Maud Maron.
Yes.
Maud Maron is a yes. Sonal Patel.
Abstain.
Sonal Patel is an abstention. Jessica Savage.
Yes.
Jessica Savage is a yes. Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg.
Yes.
Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg is a yes. Sabina Serenese.
Yes.
Sabina Serenese is a yes. Leonard Silverman.
Yes.
Leonard Silverman is a yes. Craig Slutskin is a yes. So there are 10 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstention. Passes.
And our next resolution is resolution number 237, a resolution to appoint an administrative assistant, and that is specifically referencing Victor Ruiz. I'd like now to ask our secretary to call the roll call vote.
Preet Bharara. Preet Bharara is a yes. Allison Bowen.
Yes.
Allison Bowen is a yes. Daniela Egoroff.
Yes.
Daniela Egoroff is a yes. Gavin Healy.
Yes.
Gavin Healy is a yes. Charles Love.
Yes.
Charles Love is a yes. Maud Maron.
Yes.
Maud Maron is a yes. Sonal Patel.
Yes.
Sonal Patel is a yes. Jessica Savage.
Yes.
Jessica Savage is a yes. Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg.
Yes.
Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg is a yes. Sabina Serenese.
Yes.
Sabina Serenese is a yes. Leonard Silverman. Leonard Silverman is a yes. Craig Slutskin is a yes. We have 12 yeses, 0 noes, and 0 abstentions. It passes.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is, oh, and by the way, the resolutions will all appear on our District 2 Community Education website. You just Google the CECD2. The next item on our agenda is new business. I was looking at the working business meeting agenda, and I didn't see the specific. Oh, yes, okay. Let's do approval of minutes. So we have the draft of the minutes for the October 18th, 2023 annual meeting, calendar meeting, and working business meeting. Motion to approve the minutes from our October meeting. Well, does anyone have any comments on the minutes, any amendments, any adjustments, any changes they'd like to propose? Okay, I'll call for a roll call vote to approve the October minutes.
Thank you. Pre-vote aye. Pre-vote aye is a yes. Allison Bowen. Allison Bowen is a yes. Daniela Egorov.
Yes.
Daniela Egorov is a yes. Gavin Healy.
Yes.
Gavin Healy is a yes. Charles Love.
Yes.
Charles Love is a yes. Maud Maron.
Yes.
Maud Maron is a yes. Soma Patel.
Yes.
Soma Patel is a yes. Jessica Savage.
Yes.
Jessica Savage is a yes. Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg.
Yes.
Sarah Schechter Ehrenberg is a yes. Sabina Serenise.
Yes.
Sabina Serenise is a yes. Leonard Silverman.
Yes.
So Leonard Silverman is a yes. Grace Luskin is a yes. There were 12 yeses, 0 no's, 0 abstentions, so it passes.
So the next item on our agenda is new business. Before we go to new business, I just wanted to say, looking at the November working business meeting agenda. So my question was just where do we want to include the bylaws discussion? So suggestions, I'm happy to include them between 1, 2, 3, 4. Was it earlier than the working business meeting, or towards the end? Doesn't matter.
Wherever you want to do it as a president.
First one.
Okay, so I'm just gonna make a motion to, it's not on the agenda, I just want to make a motion to amend our agenda to include a discussion, a presentation of the proposed bylaws changes. For Edward's reference, in order to change the bylaws, we have to present the proposed changes, and then we'll vote on them at the next meeting. So I'm going to make a motion to include that after our update from our superintendent, on the process to appoint a student. Can you stick around until that?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Can we just do this all in favor of that motion? Really, a second motion?
Yeah, sorry, can I just say one thing? I'm still unclear. For the proposals that we saw, that Maud had proposed, and we saw last time, are we voting on that today? We're not.
Those would have to be presented, and then there'll be discussion on those proposed changes that the council will have. And then, once we agree as to what those proposed changes are at this meeting, then we vote on it at the next meeting. Of course, 2 meetings, one they have to be presented. They were not presented, even though they were included, they weren't presented to the council. There was no discussion during the last meeting.
I think that's not correct, but I'm actually fine with having the discussion this month and voting on it next month, but I think including them in the agenda suffices, but for the sake of moving things forward, we can vote on the proposed changes next month.
Okay, I disagree, but I'm not going to comment. Okay, so I make motion second to include that as item right after.
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. So we're going to amend the agenda to include that. Between the update and the superintendent and update of the resolution. Any new business anyone wishes to discuss?
So sorry, there is a typo in the minutes that I just found. This is like totally meaningless, but.
No, we're going to get break 30 back to that. Now, can you point that out, please?
If you see it's not meaningless, the committee's right.
So it's not the one?
Yeah.
That's clearly a typo.
Just letting you know.
Thank you for doing that. Can you tell us what page that's on?
Page 16. Sorry, Craig.
So just point out which item
Under committee. Second to the last from bottom committee.
It was the Students with Disabilities.
Gavin is the chair of that, and it's a different committee.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry, okay.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning the calendar meeting for November? Meeting adjourned. Does anyone wish to take a short break before we go into the working business meeting, or you wish to go right into it? Let's keep on going right into it, we'll make it easy time. Okay. Greg, have you recovered from that typo?
I feel bad, Jessica's committee's very,
All right.
Jessica's committee's very important.
You should feel bad, Craig.
And they gave it to Gavin.
Well, now we call our working business meeting. By the way, there's no public speaking session in the working business meeting. In case any of you were thinking there's a public speaking session, I just want to let everyone know that. Call to order, let's call to order our November 2023 working business meeting. And ask our secretary, please, call roll call.
Reed Walker, Allison Bowen.
Here.
Daniela Hegoroff.
Here.
Gavin Healy.
Here.
Charles Love. Maud Maron. Maud Maron.
Here.
Sonal Patel.
Yeah.
Jessica Savage.
Here.
Sarah Shachter Ehrenberg. Sabina Serenise.
Here.
Leonard Silverman. And Craig Sluskin is here with a lot less pride right now.
Okay, we have a forum for our working business meeting. Okay. The next item on our agenda is an update from the superintendent on process to appoint a student appointee to CECD2. I just wanted to point out that I recognize now that all meetings are in person, so that representative would have to be here in person. Maybe that has something to do with the inability to find someone for the position, but. Superintendent, want to report?
Do we thank the principal for hosting us?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.
You want me to say the words? Yeah. So we had
how do
students submit their application.
apply for this? Because I feel like, I'm sorry. Sorry, oh, sorry. I just want to ask how you get on this committee, because I feel like that's the best way to. Yeah, the parents will, yeah.
We have the contact information.
Okay, I'll just email you.
Yeah, thank you.
Superintendent Martin's question.
Okay, no, I want to say that we've had two students who have applied for, both of them for the position, both of them have withdrawn. And I don't know if it has anything to do with participating in person. I do have a meeting later this week with Superintendent Gary Beidelman, who's the high school superintendent. We did forward a message to all of the different high school superintendents who are in our district. We have been pestering Principal Levin from the Clinton School, since the Clinton School is the one high school that is in our district. We would very much like to have a student representative. In fact, I think it is in the bylaws that we need to have a student representative. So we'll put a call out again for any students who would like to participate on the CEC. I promise it's a lot of students like to apply as a part of their college application. Time is running out, but hopefully we have some kids who maybe are taking a gap year or something like that who might like to apply. But we'll continue to put the call.
And I just wanted to add that we are doing our best. Our meetings will routinely run to 10 o'clock and we go live. We're doing our best to get people out. Well, we're not going live. They went to 1 o'clock when we were online. We usually have to be out here by 10. We're making great time, and I hope to be out here by 5 for good tonight, so.
Yes, for sure.
But, please, anyone that's interested online, let's superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for staying. Item number 3. Now, that's the matter that we had, that's going to be proposed changes or amendments to our bylaws. I will now ask Councilmember Maron to explain the proposed changes, and then we will have an opportunity to discuss them as a council.
Sure. Let me just say that I'm going to read to you what our current bylaws say about amending the bylaws. Article 10 says these bylaws may be amended at any regularly scheduled calendar meeting of the council by a vote of not less than the majority of the whole number of the council 6, which I'm proposing to be changed to 7 because that's the correct board number, provided the amendment has been presented in writing to the public at the previous calendar meeting and appears in the notice of the meeting at which it is to be amended. Amendments are effective immediately following the adjournment of the calendar meeting in which they are approved. This bylaws was that the proposed changes were added to last month's calendar meeting and were provided in writing and presented in writing at the public meeting. Because they were attached, they were submitted to the council, and they were put in the notice of the meeting. So we certainly could have voted on these meetings. I am not opposed to having a conversation about the proposed changes, so that we can vote on them at the next calendar meeting. The two proposed, we had a bylaws committee meeting to update prior to the last calendar meeting, at which we discussed several things, some of which there was no objection to, some of which there was some objection to. I'll run down a few of those. And they were listed in the comments of the attached PDF that was submitted to the council. One is a housekeeping issue. We need to change, we went from an 11-member council to a 12-member council, so we have a different quorum. We need to change that in multiple sections, like not all of them, except I think section 10, which I don't remember if I caught that one or not. That's one. The other is a discussion about moving from a single president to potentially having co-presidents. I sent everyone an email yesterday after we had our check-in with Face and Juliana Federoff, where we had discussed, those of us who are on that call discussed having the proposed language, instead of being as comments, to be in the actual document. So I sent that to everybody on this council by email yesterday. There were other suggestions made that people had disagreements with. I suggested moving to one public speaking session instead of two. That was objected to by some of the members some of the council members at the bylaw committee meeting. So Nal Patel suggested that we incorporate the code of conduct that's recommended by the council. I objected to that based on some due process concerns that I explained during that meeting. So those issues, my suggestion as the chair of the bylaws committee would be that we have further conversation on those, but that we be prepared to vote on the two issues of changing, of the housekeeping issue of changing our quorum number, and so that it's in sync with the current reality of our council and the current legal quorum number of our council, and switching from a president to a co-president model. If anyone now would like to comment on any of those issues or add an additional issue for discussion, I'd be happy to hear it.
I'd like to comment on switching from president to co-president. I think we should make sure the language in our changes is inclusive enough so that the council can decide on any given year whether or not it's appropriate to have a president that year or co-president, so that we're not obligated under this change to have co-presidents. And I'm not sure that the language properly reflects that. I think we should make sure that it does.
Allison had raised that with me before, and I agree with her, and I think we can, if we keep president or co-presidents, we can have in a year where only one person runs for president and no one else wants to be co-president. The other issue that could potentially be discussed is whether or not people want to run together or run individually. That's another issue with co-president or co-secretary or co-treasurer. Some of the other councils have switched to a first vice president, second vice president, those kind of committees that are individual, but when you're doing codes, some people choose to run together.
So I was trying to get some clarity, just so we're clear, just on this particular issue. Assuming the change was adopted, what would the effect be, just for my own understanding? In other words, if the bylaws were meant to have co-presidents without me, then we would have to wait until the next, until like a year, what is it, July? In July for a potential vote or?
Our current bylaws say that effect's going to change immediately upon the vote. So if we voted to have any position be a co-position, we would need to hold that election in order to, because that position would then be a position that was called for in our bylaws that someone could run for and be elected to.
So, sorry, I want to clarify. So let's say this gets approved in December. Does that mean at the January meeting, we're having an election for someone who may or may not be a co with Len? I mean, but if somebody wants it, let's say Bree decides she wants to be co-president.
Bree could nominate, and she could, that motion would be seconded, and there would be a vote on Bree being a co-president of the council.
I think that technically that might be possible, but I think logistically for the operation of this council, that even if we implement a change to co-presidents, it makes sense to have that not occur in terms of being effective until our next cycle of elections in our annual meeting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We as a council had an election for a president, that was done, and I don't want to undermine that election. Essentially, we're doing a regional, but we can discuss that and vote on it next month.
Yeah, I don't think that the intention was undermining the current presidency. I think in the discussions that we've had, it's because there are some things that require president's attendance that a vice president can't necessarily step up and participate in, and this may make it easier for the workload going forward in terms of the council.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't really see any positive to having co-presidents. I think Len has experience is doing a fine job, and we do have a vice president. We do have, I think, a ways to step in if whatever, there's a session he can't come to or he's running late. I do think that too many cooks kind of spoils the broth, and I think that we have the potential, I think, with co-presidents to have things kind of drag on, and I think that would be unfortunate. With respect to some of the other changes in the bylaws, I wanted to note that I attended the meeting, and I didn't necessarily object to every single thing that I didn't approve of, and I don't think that was really expected, or it certainly wasn't asked. So in addition to, I would not want to eliminate the second public speaking session, just because we've seen today that people do want to speak and there are important things they want to talk about. And there's some other, odd things, I think limiting the superintendent's presentation, in the bylaws to just one person or designee would be, it actually limits us. And I think Kelly has been very accommodating, so if we asked him, please limit your presentation, he will limit his presentation. I think we've seen that, time and again. So I would rather, have us give more time to the public and maybe, less time to a second president, and make sure that we can hear from the superintendent when we need to.
So can I just make one clarification? So in the packet now, you have what she originally had sent, which was last month, which included the speaker session. I printed these yesterday. She sent out the things last night, so I didn't want to reprint everything. So I think she would do that piece for now, at least. I think it's just the, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just the 6 to 7 and the co-president. That's all that you're
I just have a question for you about the packet that was handed out, because I don't understand why a second version of the bylaws with only the code of conduct highlighted was included.
That was submitted as well.
I'm sorry.
That was submitted as well. I printed that what I was submitted.
Okay, but is it submitted, I don't know what it means. Is there a proposal attached to it, or it's just submitted as a highlighted item?
Samantha, put it in the same way that the bylaws changes that you proposed at the last meeting were included in public documents and for discussion at this meeting. So I submitted a separate set of bylaws, including C210, as a proposed bylaw amendment for public notice and discussion today and for vote at the next meeting. That's what was there.
Okay. So I think, if I may then, unless someone else has is ahead of me at the moment, but with regard to D210, I'd like to share with the council what I shared at the bylaws committee. Any objection to that now?
Can I just go back to the co-president? I'm just trying to understand what the impetus is for the change to a co-president.
There was some discussion among returning council members prior to our last annual meeting about co-presidents being optimal and better, given some of the experiences of the last council. so that you could have for meetings that people needed to attend. I'll point out that CECD2, which is our sort of across the park council, just switched this year from individual presidents to co-presidents, and they did that change at the beginning of this term and have moved to co-presidents during this term. I strongly disagree that a council needs to wait for a year to effect a change that they think is good for the council. And so CEC3, just this year, since July, changed their bylaws to have co-presidents and currently have co-presidents. So that addresses that. With regard to the D210, I'm on record prior to D210 passing with my due process concerns about it. At our last face check-in, I think only about 4 or 5 of us were there. Craig and I asked Juliana Federoff, our face representative, if she could provide us information as to who is on the Equity Council that is written into D210, and also how the Equity Council members are selected, vetted, and put in place in this council. Because the process, if there's a complaint made under D210, is to the person who's being accused, as it were, under D210 is contacted by an equity officer who asks them to speak with them. There are currently many parent leaders who are in what you could call a standoff with the D210 equity officer because people are asking to both record their meetings and have an attorney present, and the equity officer is indicating that they're not allowed to, what is inaccurately indicating to them that they cannot bring a counsel or record their meeting. And then if that, my understanding is, although it's a very poorly drafted regulation, my understanding is that if that's substantiated in some way, it goes to an equity council. I have numerous due process concerns with that, and I don't think that it is something designed to facilitate the functionings of these councils or make them work better. So while I'm not opposed to a code of conduct that, such as our norms, our rules, and regulations, I am opposed to what the DOE is currently doing in terms of enforcing what they have outlined in D210. And that's what I shared with the bylaws committee.
If the intention, as you mentioned, Allison, is not to undermine the election that we just had, can we have in writing that this would be implemented only at the next in July election? Because I mean, again, this council has a long history of ousting presidents and coups, and so I think it would be helpful to not undermine the election that just happened, and then really, Len has committed to the position. And so I think it would be important for us to make sure that this is only at the next term in July.
Daniela, you're the person who told me you thought there should be co-presidents at this.
Yeah, I agree. Next July, when we have a new election. Yeah, that's what I think. That is my opinion.
Len, can you share, or maybe Maud, one of you share the situations in which the president of the council was required or requested to attend meetings, and you were told that a vice president could not act in your stead in those situations, and how that precipitated this conversation?
Sure, okay, so there haven't been any specifics so far this term. But in the previous term, what happened was, my understanding was Ben Ward, who was our prior president, for example, would attend meetings, and when he was unable to attend them, I forgot the specifics, which meetings these were. I don't know if they were DLT meetings, or he went to, there were certain meetings where you were only allowed to speak or you weren't present if you were a CEC president. So when there was an attempt to, I think, send you didn't know,
When I was vice president of Ben, so 2 years ago, I attended several meetings that he could not attend. But last year, I think there were a couple of meetings that were like with Mayor Adams, which were much more exclusive, where they needed its only presidents. So there was a few instances, but the meetings where all the CC were represented, that Ben could not attend, the vice president usually would just attend if the president could not attend.
3.2, back to work. Is this like presidential exercise part for the duties of president and terrorist?
Well, I do think that there has been some instances last year where only presidents could attend. So I agree that sometimes if we have a president who is too busy and, has a job, but who cannot attend the meeting, then, sometimes the vice president cannot attend. So I do think that it makes sense to have the option of having the president. But I do think it's problematic of leaving in the bylaws the option of undermining the election that we just had a few months ago.
Yeah, we acknowledge it, the DOE doesn't always acknowledge that. I think that's the issue.
I was just gonna ask, I know we were talking about the president, co-president thing, but at some point, when we finish that, we're gonna get to the other issues, the changes, like the second public question portion of it.
Yeah, I thought that was withdrawn, correct? Because, was it withdrawn? Because
I didn't hear what
because I can tell you that any thought of eliminating a second public speaking session, like, that's nuts. I mean, people come to these meetings and they want to show up in person and they want to speak again, and it's not a big position to have them speak again. So I would be.
Oh, I don't care, I didn't hear anybody say anything.
I just think that's already been withdrawn.
No, I was just.
Yeah, I don't think that's on the.
And then the code of conduct piece, I don't know if that's there.
That's
no
a
more.
question. So that is a proposed change, which is not.
Right, but so was that added, because it wasn't added to the other piece?
To get her people.
Right. Because I just know it was highlighted, so I'm assuming it's being added. One thing I want to say, if we're talking about the code of conduct of the council, I do want to mention something that happened recently that didn't come up, and it's pretty important. I don't know if you all saw, but Councilmember Healy wrote a piece, an article, basically calling the council racist. And I took offense to it because there was an intentional omission. I know earlier Lynn said that he had issues with a council member and didn't say their name. I don't have a problem saying names. So whoever called you out on Twitter, you should call them out. But the issue was, so he talks about segregation and the racism and how the council doesn't agree with it, doesn't care about black kids. And so he quotes a council member one of the council members even said, this is in 1950, right? So any honest and logical person would take that quote to intend that this racist council is so bad that this Klans member even said that. Didn't bother to mention, forget about not saying the name, didn't mention the fact that the council member who said it was black. Because there's a reason for omitting that if you're trying to point out that the council is racist. So as you're adding the code of conduct to that, where does that fall in line to your code of conduct? You're looking at her.
You're ascribing some things to me that I certainly never said or didn't write in that piece. So
You did not? You wrote the piece, right?
I'll just leave it at that.
And you quoted me, but you didn't say me. Right? No? Okay. You going to find the piece to see if you wrote it? How was that? You want to watch the TV?
So back to the need for the code of conduct. All your objections are noted.
You speaking for Gavin, or I'm just trying to
I
understand?
moved on from that. I think Gavin has said what he has to say.
Oh, so you wrote the piece?
We're moving on.
I'm just trying to get an understanding of what's going on. Is Gavin not speaking, or because he's starting to speak, or what's going on? Are you speaking? Because he looked at you, maybe you're speaking for him?
He looked at me to see if I wanted to say something or take the mic. Anyway, Gavin has responded, so I don't think he really has anything else to say. As far as the code of conduct is concerned, all your objections are noted to due process. As I said at the bylaws meeting then, there are venues, as you know, as an attorney, where you can challenge the due process piece of it or challenge the regulation itself, but as of right now, D210 is a functioning applicable regulation that applies to this council. If the objection to including the code itself in the bylaws is any reference whatsoever to D210, or is it the code of conduct, the language of the code itself that is objectionable? I'd like to understand that. I mean, we can all agree that this council could really benefit from a set, shared set of standards on how we treat each other.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think we did have a bylaws meeting a while ago during our last council, where we tried to discuss, we actually had a discussion, and maybe 2 councils ago, we had a discussion about coming up with some sort of like what to say, you know, kind of like a code of conduct. I don't think we got too far on it. Look, my opposition specifically to 210, including 210, is that it seems to be used as a weapon these days, where people say, I'm going to 210, I did 210, this happened 210, it's supposed to file a complaint against me. I'm not aware of it happening to me, but I've seen people that are talking about 210 kind of being weaponized. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I don't think it's necessary to really, it would be appropriate to include it in the bylaws per se. I think we could theoretically come up with language that I think would be a little better and address your concerns about being more civil with one another.
Right, so that's what I'm trying to understand.
I think we could do that without necessarily incorporating mechanisms for making complaints about people in the bylaws.
So if we look at the changes that were recommended, it sounds to me like the objection you would not have is simply to the clause, where the council members are subject to the provisions of D210, as opposed to sections A, B, C, D, et cetera, that actually lay out the code of conduct. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, no, so that's not true for me, but that also just speaks a little.
Yeah, I also disagree with including this in our bylaws. If D210 exists, it exists, and it's duplicative and unnecessary, and we don't even need to be discussing it at this point in time.
I do have a procedural question. So I understand everyone's discussion about the various topics, so we have the proposal to change 6 to 7 to incorporate the increase in our membership, council size. We have the discussion about the co-presidents. We have discussion about including the language. For purposes of our vote next meeting, which we can discuss beforehand, I'm presuming we're going to vote on these as a line item per item as opposed to in total. Would everyone agree with me on that?
There's 3 items we'll vote on. We'll vote on changing the board number, vote on whether we have co-presidents, and vote on whether or not to include the code of conduct.
Okay, we will all agree on that. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Okay. All right. So.
Then, sorry, would we have another language that you should include about?
Well, theoretically, right now, it's just the language is there. So there were some suggestions that were made. Those could be theoretically presented at the next meeting if someone would like to have enough votes on a specific item. I don't.
Only because at our first meeting, when we had the first meeting that we had, I mean, I don't remember what it was called, but we talked about what we would agree, all of us, as our as what we would agree with in being civil and our dignity. And I was just reading them just yesterday actually, and I thought they were very well represented, and it's only 4 or 5 left.
Okay, I mean, so if you wanted to propose additional changes, you could propose those, but you'd have to present them at the next. And by the way, if you disagree about presenting to meetings, you actually discuss them, you bring them in front of the community, you put them online, you have a discussion, not just doing it kind of behind the scenes. So I guess you could make additional proposals, and we could present them at the next meeting, and then you would vote on those specifics at the January meeting. This is kind of a fluid process, so we can incorporate any suggestions you want. just make the suggestions and just send them to us, or if I can do that, it's up to you. So, any other discussions of any specific bylaws, proposed change?
Sorry, then, just one very small thing, just for saving time next time, I think there's a few other places where we need to change from 6 to 7 or 11 to 12. That's Article 2, Section 2, Article 4, Section 2, and Article 4, Section 3. So just add those, so.
I think that we'll make the motion that in all the places where it says 6 out of 11, we change it to 7 out of 12.
Okay, next item, or
One last thing. It's just this administrative also that I'm looking at it, the table of contents doesn't match the actual names of the amended articles. We probably should clean that up.
There's also a few typos here and there. I think we can do a blanket, which I highlighted in the original that I submitted to the council last month. I think we can incorporate those changes to say any and all pagination for current versions.
and just one thing, council should keep in mind, we can still discuss this before vote next time, as well, it doesn't have to be, not to be called here, they will send it to vote, we'll just have the option to do the vote. Next item on the agenda is updating resolution of hiring a D2 administrative assistant. We passed the resolution. I was originally told, I know those are emails flying back and forth, I was originally told the earliest that this meeting should start with tomorrow. And again, so if they work, there's a resolution required to have cut.
Then wait, I'll just update that for you. He's not, I received information from Juliana Federoff today from VASE. Because he currently works for the DOE, he has to give notice on his current job, so there's gonna be a delay there while he gives a notice and his current DOE position comes in, so he won't be able to start tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I think it's like, it's tomorrow.
He was on that.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad Okay. The next item on our agenda is a parliamentarian position. Any thoughts on this?
You do a very good job.
Next item is school liaison updates. Would anyone like to do school liaison updates? All right. Next meeting location will be our district office. What's the date again for next meeting? December 20th. Okay.
And you've already taken it out.
Okay. Next meeting is December 20th. It will be our district office. Okay. December 20th. One of us will be they not be here either.
Maybe the co-president can take over.
So I know you guys want to get it. Next item is new business. Any new business you guys wish to discuss?
I have 2 issues of new business I'd like to discuss. One, I would like to propose an academics committee. We have primarily had our discussions around admissions, but I think we should create a committee that's focused entirely on academics and divorce it from admissions issues to the extent possible. Or really just to focus entirely on academics. I've discussed with some council members ways in which we could address and improve some academic issues in District 2. So I'd like to move to create that council. And 2, I would like to reiterate and ask that we have either discussion or agreement that going forward, we circulate draft agendas to the entire council before we post them online. I mentioned, I sent an email to the whole council. I didn't hear from, or Len, from you or from anybody else. But at the beginning of this, right before this meeting started, I asked Len about it because he and I served on the council previously when that was the common standard, and Len said he didn't remember. So I did a quick search of my CEC emails from the 2017, 2019, and the 2019, 2021 term. And sure enough, if you search draft agenda, every single month we circulated a draft agenda to the entire council before we put it forward. I think it would help enormously and would be more respectful to all the members of the council if we did that. Is there any objection to it?
Well, I think we could try to, did we get that earlier?
Well, I asked everybody if they
Yeah. I think asking everybody if they have anything actually goes a long way to that. The question is, how long are we talking about?
This would be something we would assign to the administrative assistant, or the president can do it as used to be the practice.
Okay, well, let's so it's clear it's not the practice the last 2 terms, but, the question, right, we can have a discussion about,
It was the practice 2 out of the last 3 terms.
okay, I don't really have a debate with you right now.
I'm not debating, I'm just stating a fact.
I get it, but it wasn't the practice last time, that's all I'm saying.
Right, there was a certain civility issue last term that was a problem.
I think there's some stability issues as well, but I'm not objecting to that, I'm just trying to make it easy for everybody to have enough time and to make it enough for Craig to do an agenda and give people opportunities. I would be open to trying to get an agenda at least 10 days, again, it's reasonable, 10 days before our next meeting, but which can always be agenda, that will always be amended. Well, again, I don't see what the real controversy is here, but we can try to do that. We can do that, okay, we can try to do that. I don't know if we need a formal vote on that.
I don't think we need to vote on it, it's just a change in practice.
We have to accommodate that, accommodate one. Any other new business?
Then we could establish the academic affairs committee.
Okay, so let's have a discussion on academic affairs committee. Is this going to deal with the curriculum as well, or could you just elaborate on more of the specifics of what you were thinking?
Well, for instance, I heard from a parent who got a very low lottery number for her student in 8th grade right now, and looked at all of the schools in all of the high schools in Manhattan. This is a Manhattan District 2 parent that offered calculus. And she believed very firmly, and this is someone who was familiar with the process, who's gone through it previously, that her child had a very, very low chance of getting assigned to a high school that had calculus. And this is a child that's a STEM-oriented math and science kid, and it distressed her. And I think that sometimes when we get caught up talking about admissions, we sometimes, in the conversations that this district has had about admissions, we sometimes forget to talk about making sure that we're meeting the academic needs of kids in the school, in the larger school environment that we have assigned to them. I would propose that Allison and I be co-chairs for that committee.
Okay, my position on this is, my position is that if anyone wants to volunteer their time and efforts to work on a committee that they feel is meeting the needs of the community, as long as it is not redundant or duplicative with another committee, I have absolutely no problem with that. So I would support that. If anyone else would want to have an academic support.
Thank you.
Academics.
So,
Okay, so
No, I want to, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't hear the, so what is this committee going to, what is the focus of this committee?
Academics.
Okay, but we're a community education council, so academics generally should be our focus all the time, so I'm just curious specifically what on academics? I'm just curious what some ideas you have or things that you might discuss, so people you might bring in.
Why don't you come to the first meeting now?
Why don't you just civilly answer the question, Ron?
Okay, I think she, look, in all fairness, I think we have had discussion, and I mean this, and I'm not trying to be polite. I think, I do believe that if members do more, kind of go run with the committee and see what they can contribute, I'm okay with it.
No, me too, I'm not objecting to the committee, I was simply asking information about what the committee might do, in case I might be interested in joining, I don't know, they had an idea, and so I was curious as to what they were planning,
I mean, again, I don't want to speak for Muller or Allison, because I know they have their ideas, but one thing that we might want to think about is within that committee, or maybe separate committee, but probably within academics, we have a whole new reading curriculum coming up, right? With wisdom, that's in a couple of schools and pilots. We should probably be having conversations about it. Is it working? We should bring in the principals of the 2 schools that are piloting it. That to me sounds like part of academic. Now, it may not be what your thought is on that, but it certainly could be. I'm just thinking of like, what is academics?
Or you can have separate written with it. Yeah.
Okay, and just so we're clear, also as president, I'm appointing Maud Marin and Allison Lloyd as co-chairs of academics. Okay, any other business? Okay, motion to adjourn? Thank you, everyone. Look, it's 9 o'clock. Thank you.
They were 5 minutes ago.